I don't want to be at that point, because it doesn't take much. I'm not even talking about an accident in the weight room. I'm talking about, a stroke or something, or just life. Whatever it may be with lifting that just isn't worth it. Like the risk reward just isn't there anymore. And I want to be able to roll around with the kids. I want to be there. Powerlifting, it pretty much accomplishes the opposite of everything concerning that. The opposite of everything there.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. What's going on, guys? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting live from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, get real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. On deck today, we have Sam Brown and Brian Carroll. Brian, I would love to ask you, because you were one of the last guests we had before we ended the last season, what's been going on?
I'm going to blame all of this on Brian.
What's been going on since you were out here last? Because I believe that was March. And there's been a lot.
Well, I started my transition in life, not what you're trying to think, I'm saying. So, obviously, when we left here, I went to the Arnold, and that was a bizarre deal because some people couldn't come in. Like, certain people were allowed to come back, other people weren't. They still had the strongman events and powerlifting, so that shit was wild. And I almost got trapped in New York City because I talked about going to see a client after I left here. Yeah. I was going straight to New York and had a flight. And New York City shut down. The National Guard came in, and so luckily my client had a heads up on it and said, let's cancel the session because I was supposed to be there for about 4 days. So I went home and... But back up, actually, after we did the table talk, I actually got a training session in with Dave Hoff and the guys over at Doghouse. Mm-hmm. And I want to be clear that Dave Hoff did play a key role in a couple corners that I turned in my squat, specifically that day when he just talked to me about a couple things about widening my stance just a little bit more. He actually had a really good tip about bringing the uprights a little bit further out. So if they're all the way in, that you got a lot of bar bend. So as he went over 1150, he just inched them out about half inch at a time. So by the time I got 1200 plus, the bar wasn't so bent into the rack. So between that and the stance wider, my squat really turned the corner when I left and went back to Jacksonville and got home and then tore my pec. And so I did that 2 weeks before the twins were born. It wasn't a full avulsion, but it was good enough to swell up and become purple. So from there, the babies were born on March 14th, and that was awesome. It was definitely an interesting experience with the doctor coming out very calm and saying, hey, what are we listening to today, Johnny Cash or Bob Marley? And they're just all jamming out in the OR. It was pretty wild. And from there, I got shingles because I wasn't used to being
on your house.
I think on his ass,
on my back after my last cycle. No, so I got shingles because my youngest daughter by 1 minute, Riley, has a very high pitched voice. So she would wake me up screaming in the middle of the night, and I immediately thought that the dog was dying or something was happening. So I kept having these adrenaline dumps. And so eventually one day I felt like my ribs were on fire. And then I felt like someone had set my ribs on fire and then broke them on the inside. And then I got the blisters come up. So I have a spare room in my house, and I called it Chaz. I call it Chaz in my house. You know what Chaz is? The autonomous zone that was in Washington. Mm-hmm. So that was my room of dereliction and such when I got sick last year. And so I would go in there and bring a bunch of snacks and, my kind of TV and just heal up. So, I mean, I endured the shingles. I pretty much kept training through that. Mm-hmm. And then, I got COVID in July. COVID caught up with me. Talking trash about COVID last March. She caught up with me and put me down for a little while. Actually, I had to pull out of a meet because of that. And then I tore my bicep off, and I squatted 1,300.
Well, shit.
Yeah, that's that kind of summed it up real quick. The 13, it was 1306.
1306.
You should
Yeah.
know that, right?
Yeah, I know, man.
Because I said 1305 once when we were talking.
How
You're
dare
like,
you.
I know. You're like,
How
no,
dare
man,
you.
that was a 6, and that's a huge accomplishment, right? Because I can remember the text messages that we had, man, years ago when it was you were going for 1175. Was that?
Mm-hmm.
It was after that I didn't know about your back issues for that one. It was after that one because
Yep.
that's where it was. Like, man, I think I need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I can't be that bad. How bad is it?
Right.
And so then those conversations started about the cortisone injections and all the other stuff. And I'm like, man, this guy's fucking nuts. But I would. I would do it.
Yeah, you would have done the same thing.
Do the same thing. But at some point in time, it was getting to where it was a lot. It was like, I think I remember asking you, well, how often? Right? Because people get cortisone and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would get the cortisone. And it's like every week.
Yeah, I was getting them every week
And it's
before
like,
that last
yeah,
meet.
that's where I was trying to like coax you down this way that, it might kind of be time to like hang it up. And you were kind of there, but not there. It's a weird place, right? And you're kind of there. I mean, you're there now, so you're on the other side of it. Maybe not. You're still probably in a little bit of a weird place.
Yeah, bit of weird.
But it's better weird than it was back then because there was a lot of unfinished things that you had.
Yeah.
But with all that, going from that was an all-time world record too, right? The 1170.
1185. Yeah, it was the 275 all-time world record.
So going from there and then basically just being wrecked with pain, but still being able to train because there's a distinction there that you may not really get, but it's still what a lot of people aren't going to get it, so I'm not going to go into it that much. It's just kind of, I want to say it's part of the process, but as we'll talk about, it doesn't need to be.
Right.
But in that mindset, it is. Then wrecked. Then like fuck, because then you start thinking, because you and Adam in that same meet it was like a breaking point for both of you, right? Where he handled it one way and you handled it another way. I would say that he handled it probably the way that I would. I'm just going to rest it, fuck it, deal with it. Well, nothing against Adam. He's a great guy, but he's done, right? But he was probably done anyhow.
Yeah, he was mentally, he had so many other things going on, and he utilized some of the McGill methods and protocols, and his injury, he tore off his posterior longitudinal ligament, and that was going to take some rest.
That's a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
And he did come back and squatted 1,000 pounds.
He did.
After that.
He did.
Yeah, that whole time for me is kind of blurry too. So he got really jacked up in the 13 Arnold where I did, and then he rehabbed and came back, and at the old compound he squatted, I think 970 or 980 right before the meet, and did that. So he came back, didn't really have any back pain. I actually talked to him the other day when we ate lunch, and he's like, dude, all the stuff I did to my body, as long as I move well and stabilize my core, he goes, every once in a while it'll let me know if I like walk for 8 hours, in the mountains or something, but other than that, man, I just maintain it. I'm aware of what I'm doing, and that's it. So he definitely utilized a lot of the same principles. Maybe he just didn't want to give me credit. Maybe he just wanted to, because I'm the younger brother.
Yeah.
I get that. I get that. Yeah. And I say that facetiously, like not give me credit. Like I'm sure he compliments me, but he'll just tell me like, why are you doing that or whatever. And then he'll be in the corner doing some bird dogs or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I don't know if he's told this last time, but sometime in this, because it gets blurry because it was a while ago, we had some event type thing in Brian's place, Orlando Barbell, and I don't know what we were there for. It was like an underground thing at Orlando Barbell.
A Florida one in August of 2013.
And I remember you were doing the bird dog, but it wasn't even a bird dog. It's like a twisting ass thing. So you're on your forearms, you twist up.
Plank.
A twisting plank, whatever it was. And I'm like busting your balls,
should have had
man.
Dave narrate.
I would have,
Yeah.
I think that's a good video.
It's like what? And I'm like, look, what the fuck are you doing, man? And I'm like trying to bust your balls, and I couldn't do it. And I'm like, fuck. It's like frustrating me because you're the best person to bust balls for because you're always going to have a comeback,
Yeah.
just fucking ignoring it. So I had to I just had to pivot to Chad Walker or Bob Youngs or somebody else to just get off of it. But that's the point where, when people ask me about your back injury, that's the thing I always point to, because that's when I tell them, and you talked about it a little bit earlier with some of the content you were doing. The most impressive thing outside of, the squats that I've seen you do is you didn't train. You're just like, no, fuck it. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing this. And to do that in the environments that you trained in, right, is commendable. But forget that. To do it in this environment, when you're used to there's got to be a better way. And for us, then better means faster.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way I can keep doing this, but not have to regress. You had to regress for a year, and then I think at the time that I saw it was when was it a WPO? It was when the thing with the Arnold thing was in the fairgrounds.
XBC.
Yeah.
Yep.
We probably didn't even like each other much at that time. But I'm watching you. It was your first comeback, right? And the squad's like, well, fuck, this dude, this is for real. This is kind of happening.
Yeah.
Then the bench is like, well, fuck, this is kind of happening. Then the back is a little tricky. I'm like, God damn it, it was almost there.
Yep.
Then I'm starting to watch your live stream meets, right? And I come in like, fucking Brian almost had it. I'm like, what do you mean fucking Brian? I'm like, I'm telling you, he almost had it. It was this one meet, and you're chasing, what was it?
2,700.
2,700. I was like, man, it's so
right there at the Kern.
Close, man. Yeah. And so it was fun watching as an outsider, but more so because I knew what you had to endure, not from the training wise, but from the not training wise, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's hard. It's like we joked about it earlier, but a lot of us, and I mean, you've talked about it at length for the last 20 years, but a lot of us, it's an out mentally, to train and just blow it out, right? It's an out to forget about the shit going on at home, the stuff going on at work, the whole nine. You take that away and it's hard. So I've been able to have a unique perspective going through that, being that it's been my life since, I didn't even party in high school. I went out 16 years old, and I would break into the gym basically and stay there all weekend and just train. And when I got bored, I didn't have cable at home, so I'd watch cable and walk on the treadmill. Then I'd go train some more. So it's been my life for a lot longer than just the 22 years I've been competing. And so I can relate to people that tell me I got to train, or the mental thing, or I hate my husband, I hate my wife, I got to go to CrossFit training today. And so I can relate, but then I have to say, well, play the movie forward 2 years from now. What was going on, first of all, what was going on 2 years ago? Well, it wasn't that bad. It's progressively gotten worse. So what are you going to do when you're laid up in home and you can't get out of the house from this person you say you don't like? You can get up around now, but you're abusing your body in a way that you're not ready for. So play the movie forward a year or two from now. What's going to happen? You're going to be really messed up, and you're going to be dependent on this person you say you don't even like. So take care of this now while you still have some control over it. Back off, put the ego aside, talk to a counselor if you need to. I don't give them medical advice as far as what to do or what not to do as far as their emotions, but I do tell them they're going to have to back off of training.
But how do you, this is interesting to me, right? Because we had those conversations,
right?
Where I was saying that to you, right? And I wasn't able to get that connection, right? So how are you getting that connection with the people that you're talking to? Or do you think it's because you're just recently retired? Because I was out of the game for a while, right? So when we were having the conversations about you retiring or not, I'm trying to play the game of, look, you have this wife. I don't want you to end up in a divorce because you're putting too much time into this sport because of the mentality that it takes. And, at some point in time, you're going to want to have kids. And it's like, no, I don't ever want, but it's hard, man. It's hard to get in there. And it's really hard to get in there with people like you. That's not a derogatory statement. We've had this conversation before. There's a meathead mentality, right? That I don't know if we can ever get into that, to be honest. I really don't know. You can just put it out there and they'll realize later, but how are you having success doing that?
Getting through to people
like that.
And getting them to understand that they got to stop lifting for a while.
Yes. The hard ones. I mean, the easy ones, they're going to get it, right? But there's the hard ones.
So there's a guy that's an old school multiply guy. You'd know his name, and I've been working with him for about 3 or 4 months or so now. Great dude, and super just bull strong. Well, you hurt his back a few years ago, and he's about 48 years old now, and he's wanting to do a comeback, and he's strong as a bull, but his back had him down, like he was down and out last year. And he reached out to me, and I said, okay, let's talk. Here's some books to read. And he just went ghost. I knew he didn't get the books, and I'm like, okay, fine. And so he reached back out to me 3 months later, earlier this year, after he got really messed up in November. He goes, hey man, I messed up. I didn't get the books. I didn't reach back out to you. I'm willing to do that now. And so I've had him pain free for about a month now, and he's considering back to lifting and everything. And one thing I did say to him, I said that it was not wise, but I understand why you blew it off. But a lot of the time, I can give them enough rope for them to hang themselves. I'll say, well, here's what I think, but try it and see how it goes. You can always hit me back up. And I've had people where I tell them, if you continue to train, it's going to get worse. And then when I'm right, they usually come back and say, okay, I got to stop. Because countless times I'll look them in the eye and I can kind of tell they're hesitant when I say, well, you can't lift this weekend. I can't bench. And I said, no, you're extension intolerant. You don't do well with compression. You got to stop lifting for a while. But what if I do this? I said, well, I'm not going to negotiate with you on it. Do you want to get pain free or not? And so the way I can summarize this the best is it's a psychological game. Everyone's going to be different to reach. Mm-hmm. Some people, you got to meet them eye to eye. Other people, you got to be a little bit more of a good cop, bad cop. I had two polar opposites come and see me a couple weeks ago. I had a 21-year-old kid, and I had a 48-year-old man that was a very wealthy and a very successful guy. And I had to treat both of them different, and I had to kind of play up a little bit like, hey, your mom is doing you a solid by getting you down here and helping. You need to listen because remember where you were a year ago and remember how bad things have gotten the last 6 months. You have a chance now to nip it in the bud, and if you don't, things are going to get worse, and your mom might not bail you out next time. So it really just depends, man. A lot of the time I end up playing like mentor to them more than anything because they don't want to hear it. And the old me would have just kept bombarding them like I used to do to people when they just didn't. I couldn't get them to see it. I'd be like, and I'd like to go round and round with them. Now I just, I guess I've changed some of my thinking and my approach now. It's like, here it is. If you don't like it, it's not a big deal at all, But
I do think that it still might be like a little bit of a sales game to where maybe they need to hear the message 10 times before they're going to really get it. But the 10 times can't be from you.
Right.
Like I'll just pivot here for a minute. Think of the number of people over the years that you've looked at them, say they want to power lift and they want to bodybuild, and it's very clear they need to gain weight. It's very clear. They're like 6'4", 110 pounds. It's very freaking clear, right? Or you can tell just based upon their structure, if they're a power lifter, they really need to be a couple weight classes heavier to have the leverages to lift. Yep. And that gets rejected so many times. It does. And then almost in every case, if it's a serious power lifter, 3 or 4 years later, you'll see a post or you'll hear them say something like, I don't know why nobody told me that I needed to gain weight because they're so much stronger now. And you're just like, I think this might kind of be the same, would you think, with the back stuff? Now, granted, when you're talking pain, there's a large scale. So some people may be coming and saying, now everybody's scale is different too, that they want to be pain-free. But what's that really mean to them? Like how much discomfort are they really in? Because obviously for you to travel to Canada and to agree to Stu's surgery without a knife protocol, you were either in very, very bad pain or you were willing to do anything possible to come back and get the squat record that you wanted. It was one of those. It's probably a combination of both, right?
It was just being broke. Like, I can't describe how painful it was for me. So I haven't talked about this a great deal. I've talked about the day-to-day stuff that hurt. I've talked about the lifting stuff that hurt. But in 2012, my back just got really jacked up during the meet. Something happened warming up on the squat. The platform slid, and I really tweaked it. And I had to scrape and claw through that meet. Like I'm talking, I won somehow. And then the same thing happened again in 2013, and I couldn't pull the last deadlift to beat Yarnbosch. And it's two of the hardest things I've ever had to do is make myself pull 3 attempts because I couldn't even get down to the bar. I was in such pain. So even though I just squatted 1147 2 months before I saw Stu, I knew that, dude, this stuff was getting bad. So when I went there, I had to go there with a completely beginner attitude. Like I just had to break, and I told Rhea, I said, I'm going to give this 100% shot. I canceled my appointments with the follow-ups with the surgeons, the dye injection, myelogram, and all that stuff, and I just pursued it with 100% focus. And at the very least, I said, I'm going to give this a try, and I got nothing to lose at this point.
No, I forgot to mention, I don't know if we discussed this last time, you were in queue for the surgery.
Yeah.
So at that point, there is really nothing else. There's nothing to lose. You go up there, it doesn't work, you're still back to where you were actually planning.
And that was in the back of my mind. At least I know a good rehab protocol to come back if I do. And then immediately when Stu examined me during the assessment and looked at my images, he immediately said, you're not a surgery candidate because you have multiple pain mechanisms. So the likelihood of them going in and fixing the one thing that's your biggest pain generator is low, but they're not going to take away all your pain. So you still have dysfunction, and you have things that you got to fix. You got causes. You got causes that you got to address. You got to stabilize the core. So that's the dirty little secret about surgery. And people are like, I just want to get the surgery. I'm tired of dealing with this rehab. You still got to rehab afterward, bro.
Yes.
And I think people forget that with surgery, there's always potential for complication. And anytime someone's going to open you up with a knife, there's always, well, not always, but there's definitely a lot of times when that rehab takes longer because they're cutting tissue, they're cutting, like it's trauma. It's trauma to the body that they're adding.
You got to recover too from the anesthesia.
Right.
So every surgery I've had, that's like 3 weeks just to get normal strength-wise from the anesthesia. So it's just how different people react. But you're still, regardless of the joint surgery, back surgery, you're still, I don't want to say immobile, but
down.
You're down for at least 2 to 4 weeks, easy.
Yep.
And that's really before you can start what I would consider real rehab. Granted, you got walking, you have that stuff, and if it's a hip, you got the little leg raises, but the stuff that I would call, probably your definition's different than mine now. Rehab is not laying on the bed, pulling my leg with a band side to side. It is, but it's not. So when people look at the concept of the surgery without a knife, I don't think they're really looking at it correctly.
Yep.
Because that's 8 weeks, easy.
Yep.
Because the surgery alone, they forget that, and you don't train the week before the surgery unless you're an idiot like me. But you really don't, right?
Cut footage.
Well, you're depressed, and you know what I'm saying. You're in so much pain, you just want to get the damn thing over with. And how good was your training for the last couple weeks leading up to the surgery?
Garbage.
Not that good. So if you really look at the time frame, it's probably 3 months.
Yep.
Anyhow. So what the hell, So I see it now better than when I was making fun of you for doing the what was
Seal
it?
Pilates.
The seal Pilates.
Yeah, that was the one.
And
And what was weird, you talked about, you laughed in my face in a good way. It wasn't like.
That was all in fun.
It was,
but still,
but so when we were eating lunch about 3 years ago when we reconnected, and you busted out laughing with food in your mouth, basically saying that, dude, I don't know how you fucking did it. I don't know how you backed off, dude, because your ego is so big, and you just abruptly just laughed right in my face.
It is. That's what impresses me so much more about it.
And you're right, because I had no other choice but to do it. And you know what's weird about that is, it didn't bother me not training, because I used that same bullheaded pit bull mentality that I used to come up with the big squat last year in my rehab. I just said, this is what my training is right now. I don't care about this other stuff. There'll be a time when this and this and this is back in my repertoire, in my toolbox. But right now, I'm going to build a core of iron, and I'm going to get back, and I want to get my squat back because David just broke it with 1210 at 275, and I just wanted to get it back. And I did have, honestly, what helped keep me accountable to doing the program was a lot of self-doubt that I'm done. I'm done. I'm never going to be back. I'll probably be able to move well. I'll be able to squat 315 or something, but I'm probably not going to ever. I really did think, even up until a couple years ago, I really didn't think I'd ever break 1200 because I was keeping my body weight down and knew that was going to hurt my strength, but I couldn't get bigger because my body didn't like being above 270, so I was stuck in no man's land. But so I really was like, man, I would have liked to have squatted 1200, but it just didn't happen. So
what was the pivot point to make you want to go after the 13? Because you had to go up to 300 pounds, and I know you didn't want to do that.
Yeah. So
something caused that.
Yeah. So in 2019, we decided we want to have children, and I had to reconcile a lot of things with myself. The WPO didn't go well in 2018. If you could name a bad scenario with everything between my training partners and me getting hurt and all that, look, at the end of the day, it's just meets go wrong, things happen. So I realigned myself in a lot of ways, man. I got my relationship right with Christ. I got my relationship right with my wife. I just had to go back to starting over and realizing that I can't control every little thing. And that was like me breaking. At that meet, I broke because two of my training partners disappeared for 3 hours during squat warm-ups. And one guy was a 14-year training partner that just disappeared. And that they knew I was trying to make it my last meet, but thank God he had a better plan. That I went out in a lot better way than the WPO could ever went, but I wanted to fucking kill Clint. I not like smack you around.
I know, I get you.
So I was so mad, but I realized I just can't control people. I just can't do it. So that was my time where I looked in the mirror and started working on myself. I started seeing a counselor and working on things. And keep in mind, during all this, I had to come off all my supplements.
Well, I'm going to stop you here for a minute because I wouldn't say that you broke, right? I would say that you were already broken.
Right.
And then all the things that were going on at the time, and there was more than just that, all these things that were going on at that time forced you to get grounded to the things that were most important.
Yeah.
Your faith and your wife.
Faith in my wife. And I had just stuff going on in the neighborhood where people's dogs, I couldn't go on my walks anymore during the day because this guy was sending his dog after me for walking by his house. It was just, you can't make this stuff up. And you're right. I realized that I couldn't control everything. And so my mindset was changing, but then I had to come off of my HRT.
Yes.
And I was like, oh God, what's going to happen now? But I got it figured out. I got my fertility restored in 6 months. So I tell you all this because the time I wasn't on anything from January to August, I got strong without anything in my system. My squat got really strong. My bench not so much because I was coming off a shoulder injury, but my squat and my deadlift were strong.
How was you? I mean, let's pause for a minute here because usually you go off, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody that's been using for a long time, depression goes.
Yes.
That doesn't seem to be what happened to you.
Nope. I just got ultra focused on the things that are important. I stopped sweating the things I couldn't control. And it sounds so silly. I'm 40 years old almost, and it's like, hey, man, you can't control everything. But it's one thing to know it. It's another to understand that and start living it, saying, you know what, I don't even have to react. I don't even have to react. You don't have to swing at every pitch. So someone does something stupid, I don't have to react. Just walk away from it and move on.
But in your defense, for a long time, that's what drove you.
It did.
Right? So me fucking with you in Orlando Barbell, there's some intent there too,
right? Because
it's going to be like, I'm going to show that son of a bitch that maybe if I do take this time off, I will get stronger.
Yeah,
and that's just your mentality. So that's a huge mental shift, right? To where I assume that's some of the things you had to work out with, the therapist or whoever you were working with, because when that's I've had the conversations with you when the stupid things, man, we were trying to tell you that's not a big deal, but man, it was to you.
Yeah.
But you were able to flip it,
mm-hmm.
right? And then that's what drove.
It did.
So this part in your life, you don't need that deep hyperdrive, and you can find other ways to get it.
Yeah, it'll destroy. It started to destroy me.
Yeah.
what
So
it started to do.
continue. It was the HRT, and then
Yeah, so we got the positive pregnancy in August, and that day I stuck myself. I had my doctor stuff ready for me, and I'd gotten strong during the time, and my body weight just rocketed up. I went to like 295 or 300 like within a week.
Wow.
So I just let my body grow and do what it wanted to do. So I trained all throughout 2019, mostly through August without anything, and then at the end of the year I started getting my squat really strong, but I couldn't quite convert it because the gear wasn't fitting me right because I'd gotten so much bigger. So between you turn into 2020, you turn into a couple tweaks from Hoff, you turn into me really doing a lot of work on the belt squat, you turn just being in a better mental state. I started to really believe that, man, whatever I can unrack, I could squat because I'd got my mojo back. My body weight was good. I felt comfortable moving around at 300 pounds. I didn't feel like I was going to die when I tied my shoes. It was better weight, and I was super stable and explosive, and I just knew that going into the training cycle, even though I blew my bicep off a month before the meet, I had kind of a talk with myself, and I went out there to the gym in my garage about 3 days after I tore my bicep off, and I'm like, let me get under the bar and see if I can at least squat. I committed to this meet. Doesn't feel bad. So let's see Saturday. So I went under there Saturday and squatted like 500, and I pulled the guys in and I said, look, I've already committed to going to this meet. It's in memory of Gene Reichlect. Let's just go and see what I can squat. I'll put the record on there and just see what we can do. And so I shifted my training for the last 5 weeks into nothing but squat focus, and I ate consistently beef, rice, orange juice, yogurt every 3 hours, and just leaned up and got stronger and believed in myself again more than ever. And I got my core super strong by just doing everything I knew I needed to, plus a little bit when I didn't feel like it. And it just all came together, along with the group that I realigned with. They were supportive, they were huge, and I got back with Overkill, and I think that was a big part of getting that custom gear. I was strong enough to squat in the 12s in 2019, but the gear was just all jacked up because I got legs that belong on someone that's 5'2", and a torso that belongs on someone 6'4", which is advantageous for the squat, but it's hard to get pants to fit, and a squat suit built for you unless it's custom.
Yes.
So I just put it together, man, and I was just in a good place mentally, and I just had nothing to lose, man, just nothing to lose to go after it, and I felt a little empowered by my mindset at the time and having my babies there to watch and my wife, and just...
I think the front end of COVID too dropped a lot of distractions that would potentially be there normally too.
Yeah.
Like some of the people in the gym that normally wouldn't have been in the gym aren't going to be in the gym.
Yeah.
So it thins the line a little bit.
Yeah, it thinned me a little bit in July when I had it, but I had plenty of time to recover. August, September, recovered fine. But
how did your back take the accumulated trauma of those weights? I mean, was it getting shaky or was it pretty solid? I mean, if your bicep blew, obviously your body's under trauma, right? Just from the training.
Yeah.
Was it still holding up the way, or was it like if you were to stay at, let's say you were to stay at that weight, just keep pushing for 2 more meets after that, would that trauma would you regress a little bit with the back?
I don't think so, because I haven't had anything with the back for 7 years. And
Okay.
I blew my arm. Honestly, my biceps probably wanted to tear for the better part of 5 years, specifically the last 2.
I'm sorry. I'm talking more just the spinal compression of all the weight, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. So, I didn't have any problems. I drove 10 hours home the next day, straight through with the babies, and then prepped for surgery and went in surgery Tuesday, which is not wise.
No,
it's not wise to do all that, but it was a calculated risk. But my back didn't bother me one.
Well, let's just stop for a minute because you're leaving a great part of this story out, right? You saw the surgeon beforehand, right?
Yeah.
So you scheduled the surgery before the meet, like a couple weeks out, right?
Yeah, I couldn't find a babysitter for my baby, so I had to wait till after the meet.
No, but you didn't tell the dude you were training for a meet. That's the best part. It's like it's like, yeah, I can do it on this day.
Yeah, so
which happened to be after the meet.
Saw a surgeon right away, and he said, yep, you did a good job tearing this off. I'd like to see you on Tuesday. And I'm like,
It's not going to work for me.
Hey,
I'm planning on tearing the other one on that day.
I said, man, I just had twin babies. They're 6 months old. And the in-laws are just not going to be able to watch them for a couple weeks. And he's like, man, it's going to be a 15-minute surgery if I do it right away. Otherwise, it's going to be 2 hours, and I'm not interested in it.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I said, whatever. So he goes, I'll send you to Bates. So I went and saw Bates, and he's like, I want to see you next week. And I said, I can't, because this was 2 weeks later. So, it's been 3 weeks already. He's like, I want to see you next week. Got to get it done. And I said, man, I'm not going to have any babysitters for another couple weeks. And I have twin 6-month-olds. I got to, but I can come see you on Tuesday. Tuesday on October 6th or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will not be in town. But he said, okay, fine. And when I talked to Stu right after I tore my bicep, but I didn't tell him about it. I said, Stu, here's what I'm thinking about doing. I'm going to focus on a single lift for the next 5 weeks. Here's my plan for the core. Here's what I'm thinking. And he said, sounds awesome. I said, basically, I'm trying to go for the biggest lift ever done in any competition, like whether it be Thor's deadlift with 2 belts and 2 suits and straps and all that stuff. So it's the biggest lift, done in competition. He's like, sounds good. But I didn't tell him about the bicep because he had gave me the lecture that he gave me after I told him. He would have said that, your bicep can die, the tissues die and all that stuff. And I said, calculated risk.
There's a huge takeaway there, because I've talked about with myself, because we'll dig a little deeper into this stuff, like post competitive years. You're always going to drift towards like stupid shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to keep people around you. I call them realists and enablers, right?
Yeah.
So my enablers are going to be like, yeah, fuck it, sounds good, take more,
Yeah.
have another shot,
Yeah.
do whatever it's going to be, just
Yeah.
keep going. But you got to have the realists too, right? That's the one you don't really want to call.
Nope.
Right, but that's Stu,
Yeah.
right? So you're throwing this idea out at him, and had he said, that probably isn't the best thing, you still would have done it, but you would have paused.
Yeah.
Or you may have actually had more of an in-depth conversation to see why, to see how it could be better mitigated, right?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest takeaway that I'm seeing here is you still have a relationship with him, right? So you're certified through him, and you do consults and all that, seminars with him as well.
Yeah.
But more important than that, he's became that realist through this whole 5 meet process that you had, say your last 5 meets.
Yeah.
So having somebody like that in your corner, if you're a competitive lifter or bodybuilder or whatever it is freaking huge. And they got to be the word realist. It can't be, this is not a slap on the medical community, but it can't be your family doctor that says, oh, stop lifting weights.
Bad for you.
It's bad for you. It's going to stunt your growth. It can't be that, but it's got to be somebody that is generally still going to have your best. In his mind, no, Stu way better than I do. I've had dinner with him a few times. He's got your health before your lift.
Yeah, he is the most realist you could have possibly picked.
So just making that call is a huge takeaway that anybody listening to this should really understand, that you needed somebody like that before it all happened, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to find when you're coming up in the sport and you're young, because who you're going to listen to, you got ego, you got all this other stuff. If anything, any reason to drop your ego, it would be to find that person.
And they're not going to be flashy.
No,
They're not going. There's generally not going to be someone you're going to gravitate towards. That they're, they got hot chicks on their arms, and they, always have a cool thumbnail on their video and stuff. Those aren't going to be the people that really are going to tell you.
Yes, I mean, if they're fake online,
you.
what makes you think they're going to be real in life?
For sure. But Stu is as real. I mean, he said some stuff to me, and I'm like, damn. I mean, that's true. You're right, but damn. I told him when I was, talking about not lifting anymore, I'm like, what do you think about me doing something like 7-7-7, 7-minute mile, 7-minute squat, 7-minute deadlift? He goes, you want to know what I think?
Oh,
and I said, yeah, that's what I'm asking you. He goes, you're asking for a heart attack? And he just kind of said it matter of fact. He goes, you got to remember you've tuned your heart to go fast, and then back off, not to be running for 7 minutes straight. He goes, that's a good way to have a heart attack. And actually, that's how Sam Bird had a heart attack. He was doing a CrossFit WOD, just thought he was super exhausted. and they ended up going in and putting a couple stents in, I think. But he was just super exhausted. He'd been tuning his heart for big lifts for so long, and then all of a sudden you start throwing endurance training in, so the heart's trying to be, it's got a quick sprint, and then it's done, quick sprint, and a lot of pressure, and then the heart is long term, and you wear that sucker out. Runners have heart problems in their 60s all the time just from being worn out. So he shot it down, and I was like, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't even consider anything like that.
So it's really only been 6 months, right? So how are you training now? How are you navigating that battlefield, right? Because you still have the powerlifter mindset, even though you don't. I know you do. You can tell me whatever you want. You still do, because that pull's kind of always there.
Yep.
So how have you been mitigating and managing that?
So, I converted the 3-car garage. I got a complete gym. I got 2 monoliths, 2 benches. Like, I got a dream gym, basically, like a little slice of this, basically. So, of course, that is, walking out to my car every day or whatever. I see the gym right there, and of course, I see the monolift and a bar. Obviously, I go back and think about, what I've done the last 22 years. It hasn't been that bad because I've enjoyed the downtime, and I've enjoyed just not having so much pressure. Like, each meet coming up, the stakes are higher. I'm trying to do more things. The risk is higher. Like, how long until I go to the well too many times and I destroy my back again? It's nice not having to think about that stuff, and knowing that right now it's a good time to spend time with my 3 girls, and just be available so I don't destroy my body any more than I have already. And we talked about this. You said that I think you're quitting at a good time, and hopefully you've quit before you've done a lot of the bone damage and joint damage that will appear in my 40s and 50s and 60s. So I'm hoping for the best, but I know my wrists and elbows are going to start hurting. My knees are going to hurt a little bit. And it's just part of the game, but I do know that I see the writing on the wall. I see a lot more injuries in my future, not just a bicep tear. I see where it's going, and I also see how meets are going. I see the cost reward is not there for me to do it anymore. I've got a good business. I've got great contacts. Someone told me a couple years ago that I applied in my life that's been very helpful, is you can only push 1 boulder at a time up a mountain. You can kind of hold right there, but if you're trying to push too many boulders up the mountain, they're going to get crushed. So whenever I was pushing for a meet, I had to back off the business stuff. Whenever I was doing website stuff, I had to back off the lifting. So right now it's been great for me not to have that pressure and not be worried about my bench training starting at 9 a.m. through the full day till 6 p.m. That mental aspect just kind of wore me out. Like, that's the biggest thing. The supplementation and the mental aspect, I don't miss that stuff. But I do know that once about that year mark rolls around, I might become a little, curious again, or like, if I go to a couple meets. But to be perfectly honest with you, it was weird coming here, not prepping at Bob Evans and getting some food and getting ready to get after it and cranking up Eminem and like all of us getting after it, like we used to with Jeremy Frey and Driggers and Clint and Zane and Mike and everybody, Chuck coming over. But when I got here, I didn't have any desire to like get after it or anything. I was totally cool, and that's how I know that I'm good with what I've done so far. I'm okay with what I've done, even though I know that, I could pick it apart and say I wish I did better. I wish I would have done this. I wish I'd have done that. But at the end of the day, no matter what, I would still say that, and I would stay in the game too long, and I know that it's for my best interest to not continue to push.
The one thing that you touched on was a big one for me, and it was the boulder thing that you're talking about. Was the when I was training for a meet, the business was going nowhere. Then it's like, okay, this is over. Now I can do seminars. Now I can do this. Now the business is going well. And it was just this constant teeter-totter. And so that began to balance out a little bit, where every lifter knows what their best day fictitiously looks like. It's like, okay, I've done this. And it's like, okay, I could do this. I could do this. I don't want to sit here and say what I think I could have done. But anybody that knew me would agree, those numbers were viable.
24.
Yeah, right around. So something like that. But that became not good enough, right? So I had that going on too, to where even if I could pull this miraculous day together,
Yeah.
it still
And your
isn't.
bench had gotten up over 700 too.
Yeah, it still isn't going to be competitive to be where I want to be.
Yeah.
Then the kids came around, right? And then you're in a very fortunate, blessed spot right now, because if you want to, you can just work from home all the time.
Yep.
And there's some people are about quality time, some people quantity time. I had the ability, just as you do, to say, you know what, I don't care about quality time. I have the opportunity for quantity time. I will be there for when they crawl, when they walk, when they stand up, when they squat, you know, all that stuff. I will be there.
Yep.
I have the opportunity to be able to be there when they get off the bus.
Yes.
You know, and all these other things. And did that, it's still the boulder thing, you know, did it hurt the business a little bit because of that? Probably.
Yeah.
But I don't ever regret that, right? So that's the opportunity that you're in now, that's to think about. So you start putting more of those boulders in there, you're going to start becoming the quality time. And for some people, they have no other choice.
Right.
I get that. It's not a slam on them in any way. I was given a choice, you know, and you have a choice in front of you. You know, I'm just speaking from my choice, you know, so I have no experience with the other side of it. But especially with my oldest, who's autistic, I don't know when he's going to talk. I mean, he's verbal. He's not a nonverbal, right? But when he was younger, you didn't know.
Right.
So maybe every 3 days he wants to have a conversation, but I just don't happen to be there.
You gotta be ready.
Yeah, so I would have missed that. So that's a good thing that you're looking at. Now I'm trying to give you some benchmarks, right?
Yeah.
So when you start to get pulled back in.
I mean, I to sum it up, I said this on Bell's podcast a couple weeks ago, I think, or maybe I said it just a bunch of times. I want my girls to be raised right. I don't want anyone else raising my girls, and I don't want anyone else banging my wife.
Seems reasonable.
So if I'm gone just because I decided I wanted to power lift and, you know, get my name in the local paper a couple more times, which I haven't gotten, but you know the thing, and I die over that shit, that'd be so stupid. It's like, what are you doing, man? You had a good lifting time, you've got a good career, you got a family now, but you still had to have your cake and eat it too. You know, I don't want to be at that point, because it doesn't take much. I'm not even talking about an accident in the weight room. I'm talking about, you know, a stroke
Life.
or something, you
Yeah,
know, or
just
just
life.
whatever it may be with lifting that just isn't worth it. Like the risk reward just isn't there anymore. And I want to be able to roll around with the kids. I want to be there, you know, and powerlifting, it pretty much accomplishes the opposite of everything concerning that. The opposite of everything there.
And you know what's, I mean, I noticed it today when we were filming. We spent all day filming awesome stuff that'll be up on our YouTube soon. But it would be interesting to see you 10 years ago, what you would be like if you had to teach the same sort of stuff.
You can.
Yeah.
Go on our website.
Yeah.
We had him do a So You Think You Can Deadlift, or one of them, right?
2010.
There's a
11
couple of
years
minutes.
ago.
Yeah.
And look, because that's what I noticed when he was doing his stuff here today. I'm like, holy.
It's like it's not the same person.
Oh, dude.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to look that up.
the coaching is night and day.
Is it?
Oh my God. Is it? Maybe you should go look at some of those older ones, right? Right? So,
Yeah.
but there's reasons, right? So there's a lot of reasons to where being technically efficient became way more important to you,
Yep.
right? So we're teaching the squat, say many, many years ago. It's like, whatever, just fucking warm up, take some weight. I'll tell you what you need to work on.
Right.
You know, that's not that you didn't know, but you didn't care enough to really look into the details, right? Because some of the details you may not have known to be able to look that deep in.
True.
But at the same time, you're still actively competing, and your number one goal is to be the biggest, strongest lifter you can possibly be. So the focus, albeit selfish, right? So it's not misdirected, right? Because I think you kind of need that for that point in time. This is also why I think sometimes hiring competitive lifters as a coach is a big mistake, right? Because their number one goal is their lifts, and it's selfish,
Yeah.
right? And it's not a bad thing. That's why they get to where they are. But to think that they're going to be, and there's exceptions to every rule, but to think that they're going to be an exceptional coach is a big mistake.
Yep.
It's just not going to be there. That goes away. So see that so you get hurt. Then you're like, oh shit, maybe some of this stuff means a little bit more than what I thought it meant, right? Because we can talk genetics all day. You still had to train your ass off, but genetically you're built to squat.
Yep.
But it also wrecked you. So anybody that wants to talk genetics, well, let's talk about that too.
Yep.
If they're so damn good, you would never have gotten wrecked from it.
Right.
So when you look at those older videos, your cues and everything were right. You know, it was good, but nothing like it is now. You know, so it's also a good time because you've already transitioned in the coaching thing years ago, but now the coaching that you're doing and the consulting you're going to do with more focus to be able to put on it, it's going to explode.
Yeah.
It really is.
It has been.
Because your talent and your skill set for that is way beyond 90% of the people that are out there.
Yep.
So what is, and it's they'll see it when they see the videos. It's there.
Yeah, and it's that level of like, is that intangible, like that level of give a shit. Like you can just tell you care about what that person is doing and how they're doing it, which again, if you're not fully invested in that process, and I think it's that level of investment that you put yourself into. If someone hires you for a consult, for an assessment, it's like, okay, we are in this together to get you feeling better. And it is. And I saw it today. I was firsthand. I got to witness it firsthand. And again, you really do genuinely care about the people that you work with.
Well,
So.
and to go back to the selfish thing about the powerlifters, just to give them a little respect here, because I was one, you know, you still are kind of, you wouldn't be the coach you are now if it wasn't for that.
Right.
Right. So you can give me the best coach of the power lift or the squat, or I don't care what it is from a strength aspect with the lifts that we're talking about. Give me the best one that's out there with zero experience on a platform, and then give me one with experience on the platform, but 10 years experience. The platform guy is going to beat him every single time.
Yep.
Because you learn things under those heavy weights that you have to go and compete. There's a difference. Like I do stupid shit now, right? I do stupid shit. I like to train for something. So if I'm training for a max spider bar squat and I want to do X amount before the end of the year, I always set that date for like October. Because if something happens, I can just move it to November. You're a competitive lifter.
If
guess
you get
what?
hurt, you can just be a mummy for Halloween.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, that happened last year where whatever I had out there, I ended up straining an adductor and it was an issue. It's like, you know what, fuck it. I just move it 6 weeks back. It's still done before the end of the year. Guess what? You can't do that if it's a meet. You have to pull it together on that one day. So it's a completely different ball game when you have to do it on this day, right? Compared to, maybe I'll take a weight in the fall.
Yeah, it's like the practice heroes in football and baseball that can smash and bat in practice. They do great during fungo, but then they go to the game and they're out of their element. They're just not game day lifters. They're just when people dictate, you're lifting here, this is what you're using, they're just like, oh, you know, I don't have my bent bar and my favorite music and all this stuff, and you can see like they just haven't done it and they're just not very good at it. They're strong, they're just not a good lifter. There's a big difference between someone that's ridiculously strong in the gym that can do circus lifts and you're just like, what in the hell? Like, how do you even do that? And then people who are competitors and gamers that do what they need to do to win. And I can't tell you how many times that I don't care. I let people outlift me in the gym all the time in the last 10 or 15 years. I just don't care about that. I do what I need to do. Every once in a while, you know, I'll turn it up a little bit if I need to. But that's one thing I think that helped my training career is I trained with a lot of guys, 3 or 4 guys totaled over 2,500 in the gym. You got Blue, Bird, Clint Smith, Drigger's 2,300. You know, all those guys were under 275 that went 2,500. 10 years ago when, you know, that was like kind of unheard of. But we had a great training environment. I just knew when to shut it down. I just knew, like, I don't care about this. I'm going to save it for the meet. Whereas you've told me stories about the dynamic at Westside. Throw your money in the pot. Biggest rack pool takes the money home.
It was a different.
Yeah, and that's good. That's great for camaraderie and like building competition. But how much of that is too much?
Well, there's a lot, but the point that I'm trying to make is you as a consultant or a coach. So let's just kind of like downgrade this a little bit. Somebody comes to you and they want to get their back right for vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So they got 3 months out, but they don't want to go hike somewhere and their back's all jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
You understand, okay, here's a date.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make this happen by said date. You get that because the meets and you understand the deadline.
Yes.
So even if it's something that may seem irrelevant, right, to you or anybody else, it's obviously relevant to the person that just said, I want to get this done by this, or or I'm training for a meet if that's the case.
Yeah.
But most clients typically are not power lifters.
Yep.
They're competitive power lifters.
Yep.
They want to build the lifts, but most of them are not going to compete. But they have these other things.
Yep.
Right? So I think the competitors and the ones that have to put it on the line on a certain time, end up being able to empathize. Is that what I'm looking at? Empathize a little bit better with other people instead of saying, what do you need to do that for?
And then on the flip side of that is having that practitioner background. When it's a possible goal or it's not.
And that's hard, man, because you got to be real with people. Because sometimes, I was talking with Sam about a strategy of, before seeing people in person, a strategy of talking to them online for a virtual conference, just to make sure that they're not coming to you with unrealistic expectations. So let's say there's something missing in the communication through the email, you don't do a call or video with them, and they show up and they're like, hey, I'm not going to take any time off, but I just need you to help me get my back fixed because I'm doing a meet in a month. And you're just like just certain, people's expectations need to be realistic. Like, hey, I want to get back to lifting within 2 months. And I can't do that. You got to work with me at least some to be able to get you pain free. I'm not going to, I asked Stu, I said, one time I talked with the guy, spent, some time with him and told him specifically what I thought he should do. He didn't do it and went and saw Stu, and Stu told him exactly the same thing. And so I I called Stu and said, well, how'd it go to so-and-so? He goes, it went good, they had unstable spine, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, I told him exactly that. And he goes, yeah, sorry about that. I guess sometimes they just want me to wave a magic wand over them. And that's what it is. Like they really think that they're missing this magic bullet with supplementation or training, the newest training program. Training strategies are great, but you got to deviate from the program. You got to use other things like.
Well, here's the thing though. Let's use that same situation. So somebody comes at you, they're a month out, and they're all jacked up. Could you give them advice to get them through the meet? Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
Right. You could. We've done it.
Duct tape.
Lived. But here, liability wise, why the fuck would we ever do that with somebody that's a complete stranger? Because we already know the risk benefit to this is it's not.
You got nothing to gain.
There's
you
nothing
yourself,
to gain.
Me, you have absolutely nothing to gain. And the only thing you have to gain is this guy being happy smiling. Oh, I can do the meet, and enabling him.
Yes. So you tell him X, Y, Z, do all this, and then it still isn't going to be a good meet. And if it is a good meet, it's slimly a good meet, and you get them through.
Yeah.
But the odds of that happening are small. But the odds of him coming back and saying, or her, whoever it is, coming back and saying, you jacked me up.
Yep.
And it's like, no, motherfucker, I didn't jack you up.
Jack yourself up.
'Cause I ran into that situation because I'd never pulled out of any meet from an injury, ever. I just found a way, to do it. So then I started becoming like that guy. Like, hey, man, what? And it's like, after a while, I can't do this, man. I can't do this. Especially when you have shit to lose. It's like, I can't do this because first off, the odds that you're going to PR are second to none. Mm-hmm. And if you do, it's not going to be by much. So how important is this? Mm-hmm. A world championship? Yeah, back then, maybe. Nationals? I guess maybe because you qualify for the worlds, or a WPO money, maybe. But how much? Because it goes the other way. That $1,500 you're going to win, your deductible's $5,000.
Yep.
But that's what I think people want. And the crazy thing is that people think that you're willing to tell them.
Yeah.
It's like, why in the fuck? How much would you have to charge?
Through an Instagram message, they want you to fix them, and hey Brian, I live in India and I can't afford you, but I want you to tell me how to fix my back, please. Thank you.
And I'm not going to give you any sort of background information on anything at all. Just fix me.
Yeah, it's like you said, man. You don't have anything to gain, and you stand everything to lose. And and it comes back to this too. Even if you do help them, typically whenever I have a lot of great clients, right now. I've had many great clients in the past. Most of them really good. But then you have, no matter what, sometimes, no matter how good the training is, how good things go, if they win, it was all them. If it goes south in any way, it's all your fault.
Of course.
And that's just the coaching 101 thing.
Yeah.
So that even more, like, you have even more to lose when you know that, because they're not going to sing your praises if you help them anyway. And, it's not worth doing, even if you think it might be harmless.
No,
and that's why I think it's important to communicate and do a virtual call and charge them. And then apply that charge for the virtual consult. If they come and see you, roll it over to that. But that protects your time, because they're renting your brain. Not just anyone has the information that Sam has in your head. And Dave Tate, we talked about this stuff. Like, if it has no cost, it has no value. And that's the problem. People will not adhere to free advice because it costs them nothing. They have no skin in the game.
Right.
You charge them for it, then all of a sudden, man, I paid for this thing.
Get my value out of it.
Yeah. And when's the last time someone went to Costco and complained about free samples? Like, hey, your samples over there, they're just not really that good. I'm a little disappointed. No, it's free. Who gives a shit? Move on, So that's the way people, then they sample us like crazy on social media. They'll ask you, and 15 other people the same question until they get confirmation bias. They keep moving. You know what I mean? There are some good people with good intentions that I've met on social media and such. So I'm not saying that everyone is doing that, but they'll think you're a dickhead too if you tell them the situation that you brought up a minute ago about the guy that shouldn't be lifting, and you could kind of get him through the meet. But then when you tell them, the real thing, like a Stuart McGill type, like father-son talk, they'll be like, dude, you're a fucking dick. You're a dick, man. You just don't want me to be successful. It's like, dude, I want everyone to be successful. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. Now I'm going to be a dick. That's one thing that's hard. But I'm trying not to be a dick anymore at all.
Yeah, good luck with that. I've been trying to do that for a long time. I'm better. It works its way out, but I'm better. I just remove myself from certain situations like that. So
I've kept my circle a lot more tight in the last couple of years, and had a lot of people just uprooted out of my life. It just happened. Whenever I started having that mentality, God, take away people you don't want in my life that just aren't good for me. That's not. People want to act, so weird that you would talk to God. Why would you want people around you that aren't good for you? Why?
Well, the old you, it would drive you.
Yeah.
Right? But now that's got no benefit. Right? So let's say you can have 10 people around you, and that's all you can really have. Right? And like 5 of them were to drive you. And you keep them now, like you got to drop those 5 so 5 more can come in, because out of those 5, maybe 1 or 2 of them are going to be able to actually push you.
Oh, yeah.
Not drive you out of anger or drive you out of, I don't want to say hate, but
a little bit. Hate fueled it for a long time, and it's just not. That's not healthy. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the verbal judo and talking shit, dude. I love talking shit, and a lot of time people would be like, "Dude, did you hear what Carroll said?" And would get back to me, and I'm like, were you not there? I was completely facetious and sarcastic. I literally didn't mean any of that. It was just a satire. No, he said this. I'm like, oh, God. I was talking shit, man. You started it. You started it, and then,
That's the best part.
It is. It's.
We get any super chats or anything like that?
Yeah, no questions so far. We've had a lot of support for the Milk Fund, I must say. We've had...
I think that video covered the Milk Fund. I really do.
Yeah.
I think we covered that.
Yeah, we got lots of milk fund, multiple milk funds, and we just got a real big one from Boom 15, just, again, supporting the content.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions for Brian, go ahead and pop them in there. Is there anything that you want to follow up on him with that covered here. 'Cause
Yeah.
we can keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just
Yeah,
ask one serious question real
Sure.
quick before we move on? Now we've been talking a lot about serious stuff and whatnot. Do you guys have a MILF fund?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that's just something.
I'm
to keep in
married, I
mind.
guess.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
guess
as
my
fuck not.
My wife, I guess. I guess, yeah, my wife. But
Dude.
she pays me. I don't pay her.
Yep. Dude, I'm staying down there at the Holiday Inn. Yeah, I hadn't been there in 7 years. Tell you what, man, I saw a couple pretty good prospects outside the Super 8.
Remember the weed place now used to be that, oh, God, what was that bar? It was some gross-ass bar that was there. That was the fun. God, there were some funny things, man. One hotel in town, right, the Holiday Inn, and the one next to it was just rot gut.
Yeah, it's there's a couple twos walking around the
Yeah.
parking lot there.
Maybe if you
Well,
grabbed a
actually-
few of them, they'd be a 4.
Yeah, actually, it'd be interesting because, well, it's a medical marijuana place, so it's not recreational.
It's higher brow.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not too sure how that will work. Probably better quality humans than when it was that bar,
Right.
which is an interesting thing. So yeah,
I guess I could just stand outside the dispensary and they walk out, and if they're halfway decent looking guy or girl, you could just be like, hey, so you smoke weed?
it could be. I mean, the dude out there should be a cop out, not a cop, but there's a security guard that hangs out front.
Say, hey, you smoke weed?
It's like the equivalent to a chat room.
Want to come back
Yeah.
to my room? Yeah, it's definitely, there's some shady stuff going on. And around the back of the Holiday Inn, there's a guy with a little Walmart portable beach charcoal grill that he had fired up back
That's
there. I guess he was
great.
about to throw some wieners on there.
Were you down the one time when they were finding the bed bugs in the other one?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two hotels. Like there's the Holiday Inn, then it's like I don't know what's called now, a Red Roof Inn. Where I mean, one of them was literally like $30, and the other one was like $150.
That's where those prospects are walking around right now.
Yeah,
Still
yeah.
there. Yeah.
So what happened was there was a bunch of people come into the seminar, and the bed bugs were all over this Red Roof Inn, but then they couldn't. The Holiday Inn wasn't allowing anybody from this hotel to go to this one, right? So they had to go all the way to Hilliard because of the bed bug thing. And then mattresses, when I drove by Monday,
Stacked up.
just stacked up outside.
yeah, because I had to pay the bill for the Holiday Inn for the guys we were covering, and there were probably 25 mattresses. Just I'm like, holy crap, this was for real. Because you never know what people are telling you.
That happened in Cincinnati in 2010 for the Pro-Am. The whole city of Cincinnati had an infestation of bed bugs, and all the hotels had mattresses stacked, around the dumpster, on the dumpster, everywhere. So we could hardly get a hotel in 2010 in Cincinnati for that. It's pretty funny. I'm sure a couple people out there listening, like Jason Pegg, Driggers, a few people that.
I think Jason was part of the bed bug thing that was here.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait, we missing something.
Jason is one of the most. He's a good trash talker.
Oh yeah.
Really good trash. He's witty and he's pretty brutal. I mean, the dude has like 1.25 arms that work. He got the one blown up, and it's kind of like a fiddler crab arm that she kind of
It's a
keeps.
strong hand.
I'm just busting Jason's balls. He knows.
I saw him a few months ago. He stopped out for something.
I respect
He's doing
him.
well.
I respect him. Yeah, man. He's fireman, doing well. He's that's awesome, man.
So we ended up getting a question that just came in. Rocky Mountain lifting. USPA Worlds is coming up in November, and the doctor wants to do surgery on my thyroid. Is it realistic to go to do both while losing 3.5 weeks of training?
So, what federation? Is it? USA?
USPA.
USPA, and he's wanting to know if he can or they can.
If it's realistic to get a thyroid surgery and still compete.
When's the meet?
November.
I don't know.
He's
that
going to
it's
lose
ever
3 to
in
5
there.
weeks of training.
I would consult his physician and then follow up with the surgeon. That's definitely that's about the most out of my scope.
I would think so. I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, so I'm going to kind of go against the grain. But that's like 6 or 7 months, right?
Yeah.
And if he's going to get the surgery soon, I don't see any reason why somebody couldn't. I don't know the recovery. of it,
Yeah,
so
I don't know if he's getting something removed. I have no idea what.
I
he's actually doing.
I wouldn't knock it out of the realm of possibility until obviously he speaks to, a medical professional. But I think it's too early to knock that out of the cards.
It is. I would definitely ask the doctor if head pressure is going to be a factor.
Good point.
To his recovery. That's why I'm like, yeah, it seems like it should be okay in 6-7 months, but he might get you can't have extreme blood pressure of any sort for 2 years or something.
Yeah.
And the guy's head blows up.
Yeah.
And then he's
see. That's why he needs to talk to a medical professional.
Yeah, no, he's not going to get medical advice.
Hold on a second. We got trolled.
Yeah, we got trolled. Because I'm just thinking you dropped thyroid dose, right?
We got trolled because we're talking about how we don't want to tell a guy to do a meet in a month because his back's jacked up. Meanwhile, this guy's brain's falling out of his head.
Yeah, but it's not his back.
Yeah, it's true. His brain's falling out of his head, and he's like, "Hey, man, you think if they get this thing back in me, I can, I can still lift tomorrow."
So the next thing I wanted to talk about, and it was posted up on your Instagram, was your UFC appearance. Can we pull that up on the screen?
Then what's up with you and Jake Paul?
Jake Paul and I
best friends.
Jake Paul and I we connected about 3 years ago.
You have it to pull up?
There we go. Yep.
Like, where is that at?
Jacksonville Coliseum.
Okay.
So
that's also, by the way, that's his teaching stance as well. When he's coaching, that's his coaching stance. I saw that in all the videos today.
Yeah, so I don't know Jake Paul, but I did have a run-in with him at the UFC. He's one of the most infamous people on the internet right now with his trash talk and him knocking out Ben Askren. So he's been jawing back and forth with a lot of people in the UFC. So I was working Octagon security for the UFC. And so you guys saw what happened a few years ago where the people got in the Octagon with Conor and Khabib and the whole thing. Well, ever since then, they have people on each corner of the Octagon after a fight ends to make sure no one comes in the Octagon. So when I wasn't up there when fights ended, I was told about 5 hours before the event started that, who Jake Paul was, which I knew, and that my job was to make sure that under no circumstances did Jake Paul and or Antonio Brown come over the barrier, and you do what you need to do to stop them from getting in the Octagon. Because they were thinking if their guy won, they were going to go in the Octagon and act a fool. Not to fight.
I know you've done security before, but how do they define do what you need to do? Them.
I don't know. They
Okay.
left it really
That's all
great.
they said.
And I think, Jacob, if you go to the next couple pictures, you'll see what he had to deal with in terms of character.
So that's me with Usman. He walked out. I'm glad he didn't try to do anything to me because I wouldn't have known what to do. So one more. So
yeah, there's the man.
So there's me sitting right in front of Jake Paul right there, just making sure that he didn't come over that barrier. But I will say, as jackassy as he's been in a lot of things, he and his people weren't running their mouth. They weren't throwing stuff at me. They weren't belittling me. They weren't trying me. So to me, that was respectful to show that, yeah, he is doing this for attention, but he wasn't completely belligerent. So that gained my respect because someone like that pretty much has a free pass everywhere he goes, it wouldn't have been surprising if they would have been a bit more antagonizing than they were.
Go back to that first one. So when you're doing, how often do you do security for these things? Go back to the first picture.
Sorry, I was trying to change cameras.
Okay.
That was the first one I ever.
That was the first one. So where are you at when they're actually fighting then?
Down there where Jake was.
So
Jake
the
Paul.
first row. So how's that? See, obviously the seating's got to be good, but is it really? Because you're at this weird ass angle.
Depending on what side of the octagon you're on, but it's sweet being down there.
Okay.
And seeing, but some areas aren't that good. There's a lot of people there, and then others you can see right up in there, and it's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my first UFC event that I'd been to, like personally, and that was the first one I worked, and it was pretty cool to be able to be in the.
They're full
on the
capacity
octagon.
there now.
Yeah,
Or is it
was
really?
packed. There wasn't a seat in the house left.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
great.
And it was an awesome card, but I did think it was going to be on with the way, Jake Paul had said some crazy stuff about DC. He said he would beat DC's ass and all this stuff and beat him till he cried again. And so when I went to the bathroom, DC didn't know that Jake Paul was there. So when I was in the bathroom, DC got up in his face and was saying, "Dude, I'm not that guy. I'm not one of these guys that you're just going to talk trash to." And so I just missed that, but DC didn't end up doing anything. But I'm interested to see what happens with this kid because Usman, the guy that went the welterweight champion that I was just with there, he supposedly has verbally agreed to box Jake Paul in the next event. And look, Jake Paul might be a douche, he might be a kid, but he's got clout and followers that he makes money happen for these events. So Usman probably made about $750,000 for this fight because he retained the belt and such, and a bonus. But Ben Askren made over $1 million with the pay-per-view event. So I think this is the way a lot of people are going to start going. Not that the UFC or Bellator or ONE are going to become obsolete, but people are looking for these super fights because the rat race of the divisions, it's sometimes they're biased, sometimes people don't get title shots, sometimes people get skipped over, sometimes you got to fight 4 or 5 killers before you get a title shot, and this ain't going to happen for you. So a lot of the time people are doing these kind of outside the box, meet in the middle, like boxing matches and
entertainment
such.
matches, more or less. I mean, they're still matches.
Because they don't have to worry about, battling for the next couple of years. They can just take it one fight at a time and make bank, and then go about it and not have to deal with the stuff that the UFC, sometimes people are a little upset about the UFC and the way you treat the middleman there and the people that aren't at the top. So people are looking for these fights to get a big payday. So
it sounds like a different path for me, though, because if the title's still going to matter.
Absolutely.
Right? It's still going to matter. But if these guys can get, let's just call it an entertainment bout, and make $500,000 or $1 million, then they don't have to worry about the next couple of years.
Yes.
They just train, and if they don't get a big payday on the little ones, so who cares?
Yep.
They're set.
And they're pulling this stuff in other sports as well, like strongman. Like Hafthor and Eddie Hall are going to be doing a boxing match, and it's going to be, I imagine, pay-per-view, and it allowed them both to lose weight, and train for something different. But again, it's that entertainment value.
I don't see how that doesn't end in a double heart attack.
Two
guys that big that have
let's
primed
go back
their
to what
body.
you were saying earlier.
Like, I saw Thor fighting, and he looked like he was in quicksand and on 20 Xanax. So he was fighting. He just, like, slow. Dude, it's just, he's a big
Keep in mind, there's
guy.
strongmen, though.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, well, hell, no event's going to last longer than
it's 60 seconds
60
to 75
tops,
seconds.
right?
Yeah.
So how long's a round?
What is it?
They're either 1 or 3 minute, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
That's going to be a hard minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is they're trained to do that minute, from the heart thing there, because they're not powerlifters that's one rep.
Right.
A lot of the powerlifters, heart rate's just because of adrenaline blow. It's still 3 minutes is a big deal.
Yeah,
it's going to be a big deal.
Especially in any strongman event, you're not getting punched in the face.
But the training, though,
Yeah.
the training is the issue, because the training's so much different.
Yeah, so I don't know. But, I mean, I don't wish that happens to them at
no,
all.
It
Let
would
me
take a
clarify
long
that.
time. Keep in mind, they have a year. I'd have to really go back and look at my programming stuff, because the adaptations can take place, with the right training, the right blocks, and everything builds upon that. A year should.
That's probably why they did it, just to get that distance.
But that's assuming that they went about the training blocks correctly to build, that capacity up for that. So we'll see. I didn't think about what you said, though, what Stu told you about that, because that's way true. That's kind of why block training came into play.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I don't wish that they fall out or struggle, but that's just kind of like you look at something, you kind of call it what you see. I don't wish that upon them. But, a lot of people have been gravitating towards outside-the-box type things. I mean, we talk about how little traction powerlifting has gotten, and I've been talking about how much strongman traction has gotten, arm wrestling has gotten, and those dang slap contests have gotten a lot of traction. And sure enough, during that event where Jake Paul and Ben Askren fought, they had in the middle of it Ric Flair refereeing a slap contest. Right in the middle of it. It was terribly done. It was poorly put together, but they still had that sport right in the middle of a pay-per-view event.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you have a guy trying to squat 1,300 pounds right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ric Flair ain't doing well.
He was not. You saw him?
No, I've seen him before. He's not. He doesn't have that same flair.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't in the building.
Yeah. I mean, that's a rabbit hole. If people want us to go down, we can go down. But that's what you just asked is a rabbit hole we've had conversations about a few times over the past several months. Is why is powerlifting not build that traction? But let's go to something else, because that will seriously.
Let's definitely talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Let's
wait a
jump
little
in.
bit.
Let's jump on it.
Let's see
Okay.
the question, and then we'll.
Yeah, if
we'll
somebody's
Yeah.
got some questions, let's hit those first.
Sure. I got one in the chamber, actually from our own Nate Harvey. Nate Harvey asks, what were your protocols on the belt squat leading into your last meet? Times per week, heavy, light, sets, reps.
Dang, bro, you're getting very specific with everything. So Spud was cornering me for the same stuff. So I belt squatted twice a week, 2 times per week, 1 time heavy, 1 time light. So going into the meet, when I squatted heavy on a Saturday, I belt squatted light. And then on Wednesday, on my accessory day, I'd belt squat heavy. And then on the weeks that I squatted light with the barbell, I'd belt squat heavy. And then I'd get a lot of volume in on my secondary belt squat day. So I did sets of 5. I did 10 sets of 5, and each week I just added a plate or so. Added a plate, then I'd have a week where I regressed a little bit, did less volume, less weight, and then hammered it again. But the rep scheme was 10 sets of 5 working up, and I ended up working up to 14 or 15 plates with the bands. I just maxed it out basically and did a set of 5. But I knew that with that volume that I was able to achieve with the squat max, that I've never touched that amount of volume, because I couldn't put a bar on my back and do 500 for 20 sets of 5. You know what I mean? Like I've never been able to achieve that type of conditioning with that. So thinking outside the box a bit, with a lot of suitcase carries, people are really big on the marches, on the belt squats and the bands. I think that that could be beneficial, but I also think that if they would grab a kettlebell and go walking with it, 50, 70-pound kettlebell, and they switch sides and they go bottoms up, man, they could get so much out of that combined with some belt squatting, and then the core stuff that we talked about today, the big 3 and the stir the pot. Those components, belt squat twice a week, once heavy, once light, those things together were the little pieces of the puzzle that helped me. But you also got to consider that I was 30 or 40 pounds heavier on meet day, that all went to my torso and my ass and my legs and my shoulders and stuff. So my base was so much more thick and stronger foundation, and just coming off the gear for a while and then getting, I had a big jump from being able to do that. So the belt squat was 10 sets of 5 twice a week, and I just rotated going heavy and light, and then I would do different variants of the belt squat though. I would do front harness like a Zercher, then I would do front squats, so the harness would be higher, then Zercher would be lower. I would do paused Zercher, paused
during the same
squat.
is that part of the 10 sets? So the 10 sets of 5 were different variants on that
It would
day?
change. Yes, it would change.
On the same day?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And but towards the end of the meet, I just went balls out heavy, 10 sets of 5, just traditional squat. But the Zerchers, the front squats, the Spud harness I used, it was great. The Dr. Squat harness, and then the piston squat, where I just keep all the range in the middle. I don't go all the way down, which I never do in a squat. I never, literally, I don't think I've ever went all the way down in a squat in my life. But so you go. So you
Yes.
so you keep that range of motion, the focus on the
He was
quad.
waiting for us to say,
pumping-
yeah, you have.
pumping that range of motion and using lightweight and just pumping blood in the quads for
Yeah.
sets of 5. Then of course pause squats and the whole explosive squats. And then I even did speed squats on the belt squat. I'd load up 4 or 5 plates on there. I'd lower the eccentric really slow and pop up real quick, and I just kind of thought outside the box quite a bit with that, because I had more time that last month. I just hammered my legs and my core. Didn't have to worry about benching. I didn't have to worry about deadlifting. So it was a little bit of luck and a little bit of thinking outside the box and getting bigger.
So am I to infer from what you're saying, though, the volume on your squat training, though, dropped?
On my regular squat
Yes.
training? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's a key thing for people to pay attention to. So instead of doing 3 or 4 sets or heavy sets, it was way down. So you're making up the difference with the belt squat, because somebody listening may just throw
add
it on
into it,
top.
right?
Yes.
And
so
that's a lot
I would
to add on
stagger.
top.
I would stagger. I think my weights that I went before the meet were 960, and I stopped there. Then I went 1050. Then I had a deload and did a whole bunch of belt squat stuff. Came back. My next weight was 1150. It felt good. heavy belt squats, took a down week, and then took 1205 in the gym, and it felt good. Heavy belt squats for the final 7, 10, and 7 days out, and then I just shut it down and knew that, hey, my legs are strong. I don't have to cut weight. That's the biggest thing. Like, I was able to go into the meet, drinking Coca-Cola, eating Chipotle, eating Greek yogurt, and I felt like $1 million going in. So I don't want to discount that alone of me cutting weight forever and being 30 to 40 pounds bigger and being better prepared mentally and physically and being in better gear and having tips from the best powerlifter of this generation, David Hoff. Even though he won't talk to me right now, he's ignored me ever since the last 6 months, and maybe we can connect and hug it out while I'm here in Columbus. If you're out there, Dave,
yeah,
I'm here.
So you had two barbell squats a month, essentially.
Basically, yeah.
Which is that's a commonality that I've seen with a lot of guys squat over $1,000.
Yep.
I remember Dave Barno telling me this from a long time ago. Looking at him like, what the fuck, you squat once a month? He's like, dude, I can't recover.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard the same thing about Hoff. I've heard the same thing about several other people.
Yep.
But what I didn't hear is you're buffering it with the belt squat,
yep,
which keeps the volume up, which I think is more intelligent than the other.
Yep.
Right?
Dave Hoff also was on me about 3 or 4 years ago about getting the belt squat. So really, Dave, just text me your address. I'll send you a gift if you don't want to meet up with me. Send you a freaking fruit basket.
I mean, you had mentioned range of motion. You've mentioned keeping tension on the muscle. Me and Dave actually found one of the most elite athletes I think we've ever seen on the planet on this YouTube video that you sent us the other day.
Yeah, this is what you need to train
Yeah,
for
so
now.
this is it. Jacob, if you want to pull up, let's go with that first video.
Because you don't really know what to train for now. These are the records you need to go at.
Yeah, this is the stuff that matters, Brian.
And there is actually somebody in here that I think has a bigger squat than you. So this is like 2,000 pounds.
One
Yeah.
arm?
One arm.
I mean, that's...
So now he's got a good hip hinge, right?
Yeah, it's a functional movement.
Kind of like the suitcase carries you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. And anytime you're speaking Russian, it just adds like 20% to any bar weight.
Like 5 of the plates are coming off the ground. Skip forward. Go look at the squat, because the squat. Yeah, this is world record. Right here's the world record.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have the world record. This is the world record right here. Check this out. Reverse bands too, by the way. I like that.
It is good.
Why the fuck's he got a reverse band? Or is that no? It's a strap. See, did he come up? There. Look.
Wow.
You know the other thing too, Brian. His squat's deeper than yours.
I was just thinking that, man. It was it was close, and my stance was wider, so he actually moved the bar more than I did.
Show him the Grizzly real quick.
Yeah.
I
So
know that.
next,
I know he's seen this.
yeah,
You've seen the
Jacob.
Grizzly.
Next one.
I have to send this to somebody at least once a week.
Kairos Grizzly?
Yes.
That's the man.
Any of them work. It doesn't matter. This one here, like, well, yeah, that's. Go to this one. Yeah.
Well, I think we should bring up that he too tore a bicep.
Yeah. His bicep tear. Go to his bicep
Way
tear.
better.
Yeah, I want to know if your bicep tear was like this. Have you seen his bicep tear? Yes, I want to know if your bicep tear was like this.
Yeah, we'll go back to his channel.
So go to
It's right
Grizzly's
on there.
channel and then search. There you go.
Where's this guy's lair at?
I have no idea.
I bet you could hear him if you got close.
I'm kind of like new to this shit, so I only found out about this guy like a month
It's the
ago.
greatest
He would
6
send
seconds.
me. He would send me messages
Look,
on Facebook.
Is that what you did when you tore your bicep?
It should be.
You could actually pull up my bicep tear from. I think I posted it October 4th or 5th.
Instagram?
Yeah, it's on Instagram. It wasn't that bad. I didn't fall or anything. I just kind of like shook my arm like I got electrocuted. So what's this guy's deal, man? So he's got some lair in Russia, and he just he eats. He looks like he's drinking
Goats.
right out of the
Like
blender.
full goats.
I don't know what his deal is. The guy's kind of strong. I mean, he is throwing around big weights
No,
for the
he's
stupid
definitely
shit he's doing.
strong. It's like John Paul, old school, like circus strength.
That's it. So where do you get the October?
You'd have to just go down for a minute.
See y'all. No, that's not
No,
it.
see-
Oh, I don't even know what I'm doing.
See more posts from Brian Carroll. Oh, it's gonna make you log in.
Here, yeah. If you want to, I'll look through it. If we want to just move on to something, we can find
Yeah.
it.
And my truck's still dirty. Like I've been I went mudding, and I'm still getting mud off of that from a month ago.
Oh, really?
Dude, see all that grass
Yeah.
in there underneath? Man, it is like it's
Caked
growing.
underneath there.
It's growing out of my muffler.
All right, so let's talk about this powerlifting thing. Like, why? Yeah, I mean, you're recently removed from it, and we don't need to talk about the things that were going on that we were working little, but that brought up the conversation that we've had a few times. Like, why is powerlifting not making money? Like, why
Right.
is it not growing? And it's a weird thing, because when you reached out about the one thing that was kind of going on, my first reaction, like, ah, shit, here we go again. It's this freaking WPO all over again. It's this all over again. It's this all over again. I've had I've had probably 5 different people, over 30 years, have the same type of plan and idea, and I see the patterns, and it's like, ah, fuck, here we go again. So I kind of knew where that was kind of going to go, but I do see the potential pop more frequently now than we ever have in the past. Usually it was like many years before somebody would have, okay, let's do this professional thing, and it would come. And now it's a few times a year.
Right.
There's different things that are coming up, and the Kern just happened, and I think there was a payout with that. I didn't pay that much attention to know
I don't know
if
how
there
much
was
they got
prize
paid.
money or what it was, but
Yeah.
that was kind of the biggest. But what are some of the issues that you see as to why nobody's been able to get this to pop to a point to where the prize money could be comparable to other sports? Because we see the bitching, right? We see the bitching, like, why is it not in the Olympics? And we see the bitching of how come, the best lifters aren't making even $1,000 or a few $1,000s. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, I mean,
Well, let me step back real quick.
it's an easy
too.
answer, like, to start, but go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, this is not a multiply raw wraps.
Right.
It applies across the board with all federations, all types of powerlifting. It's the same
Yeah.
sticking points with each. So go ahead.
So I think that a lot of the cases, the wrong people have been in charge, unfortunately. The wrong people have been making the big decisions. There's not been enough money, obviously. Someone's going to have to invest a lot of money to get this thing off the ground if it's going to be a professional sport. With that said, their meets are too damn long. The meets are just too long. I mean, even a fast meet, let's say USAPL fast meet, they're like 4.5 hours sometimes, but still 6 hours that your family members got to go and sit. That's not counting driving, travel, everything. And that meet is buzzsawing on 4 or 5 platforms. That's 4 hours. It's done. Every other meet, pretty much, is going to last anywhere from 6 to 11 hours. So no one wants to go and sit through that. You can't televise that. You can't streamline that. The people that have family lifting hardly even want to be there and watch it. So there's no appeal for people to come watch. There's no appeal for people to watch it on TV because it takes too long. So I think those are the 2 biggest hurdles, that the wrong people have been in charge, and the meets just take too long. And
If there's any powerlifters that are on this thing, post in here why you think there's professional powerlifting doesn't really take off. I think that's one good point. The obviously having the right people involved is a huge thing. And it is going to take financial backing to kind of get it to move, in that direction. But the other thing was, and we agreed on this, is they have to take care of the lifters. That I think when people get involved, that I've seen, a lot of times the numbers that they think need to be paid out are misguided, right? It's like, okay, the winners need to make $100,000, whatever it's going to be. And there's 13 weight classes, 12 weight classes, what, depending on the federation, it kind of changes a little bit. So how are you going to break that all out?
Right.
And or as we talked about, if you got 4 people that are going to be in the pay, only 4 people are going to get paid, which seems to be the case a lot of times, 3 or 4 based upon the coefficient formula, whatever it's going to be. There's always the one guy or the one girl that's going to show up and like, okay, fuck it, I can't get first. So it always goes to her, always goes to him, which leaves the other 2. So say first place is going to be, throw numbers out, $100,000. Second place is going to be, that's too high because it's never going to be that. So first place is going to be $30,000. It's not even going to be that. So 10,000. First is 10,000. Second will be 5,000. Third is going to be 2,000. Well, immediately, everybody except that one person that is going to walk away with it, even with openers, is getting the 10,000. So immediately, everybody else is like, "No, wait a minute. I can get $3,000, but it's going to cost me $3,000 to get there, and I need to take 3 days off of work." So now it's not even a break-even opportunity. And then the 1,000, like, that's if you're third by formula.
Right.
What about everybody else? So that's where I've always said this is a little messed up, to where what if they set the pay structure up to where the top 3 in each weight class just break even or close to it, right? So the first place breaks even. Hotels covered, flight would be covered. And you know what? Powerlifters are pretty cool about things. Like if they don't have to get the flight, they're going to drive, you just pay them the gas stipend. They're not going to be like, well, fuck, you gave him a plane ticket, which costs $700.
Yeah.
They just, and then you work it down that way. I think that can build traction, because then the top 3 in each weight, you can still have overalls.
Yeah.
The top 3 in each weight class are like, okay, well, this first place, it covers everything. Hell, it even covers my days off work. The second place is, it covers my travel.
Right.
It covers the hotel. And the third is like, well, at least it covered my hotel.
Right.
But hell, and today it's like, no, you got to pay $150, $200 for the entry, right? And then maybe if you're the top 3 by coefficient, you'll get 500.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest problems.
Yeah.
Because without that, you're never going to get the best people to come. You always get the top 3.
Yep.
But as soon as the top 2 show up, anybody that might have been able to be 3 or 2 because 1 bombs out, they're not there.
Yeah.
So that kind of strips them away, but that still falls back on the people at the top in the organization. And what I've seen is a void of putting lifters. It's either all lifters, which ends up being a clusterfuck, right? Or no lifters. It's like, okay, this company's going to come in, they're going to try to do this, and it's like, oh, boom. None of these people lift weights. They don't understand what I just said.
Yep.
That if a lifter just gets half their travel expenses covered, and that's third, oh my God, that's like, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's like, holy shit, this is better than anywhere else I've gone.
Yep.
But unless you're a lifter, you don't know that.
Right.
Like, all they see is, here's this big payday. Now, if you are, here's the other caveat. The level that you're competing at, you want to see the big numbers because you got a shot at it. So you got to take care of those guys too.
Yep.
So you got to take care of, I don't want to say it's a second tier because they're all top tier, but there's still a difference.
Yeah.
So you got to take care of that pecking order too. But I think you can do that non-financially. You still got to have the prize money, but if you just reassure them, say when you were competing, look, Brian, I'm going to guarantee you these things. The bar in the warm-up room will be exactly the same as the bar on the platform. The monolift is going to be exactly the same. The pinhole settings are going to be exactly the same. The platform, guaranteed it's going to be rock solid. I mean, just simple things that you would think would be taken care of. How many times have all those things ever been taken care of where you've competed?
Not very many times. The last one I did, they had the same bars on the platform as the warm-up, which was good. The platform was solid. That's all I could ask for, at Bert and Vinny's last meet. And so many times they bungle up the platform, or they have a monolift that doesn't work in the back, and they're all hodgepodges, and the benches are different heights, and some have fat pads, some don't. It's just like, dude, this is not professional.
It's not
at all.
And I don't think that these meet directors, I don't think that they understand the message that sends. it sends to those competitors, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
So you got a warm-up bench. You got a bench in the warm-up room that the naga hide on the pad so bad that it's split and you can see the foam through it.
Mm-hmm.
What's that tell your lifters? It tells me
you can get MRSA.
I mean, yeah, it was. Well, basically, you're not worth padding, putting a new layer of naga hide on the bench. You're not worth that.
Yeah.
You're not worth a couple $100. It may not even be that.
Yeah.
You're not worth a new pad.
Yeah.
That's like fucked up, and then they expect, this grand performance on your part, or for you to tag them on your social media after the meet. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like there's a balance that kind of has to happen. Did anybody say anything with?
Yeah, so actually a few people kind of commented talking about what their opinions were as to why powerlifting hasn't exploded. A really good one here is, it's from Dave Marcus. It's more fun to do than to watch.
Well, yeah, I mean, you pointed that out. I mean, it is boring as hell.
Yeah.
But I think there are ways you can kind of fix that.
And there's a lot of comments on there being so many weight classes that even watching it, you wouldn't have a really clear understanding as a layperson of what the hell was going on.
The counter argument to that is it can always be edited down for TV, which is true. But how many edited sports events ever do well on TV?
Right.
You have to have a live component to be able to pull it off.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we have no questions coming in. Again, it's just a lot of the same things that we've already gone over.
I don't think the weight classes, I don't think that really has much to do with the lack of success, because you could say the same thing about wrestling. Wrestling has a zillion weight classes, and it's not struggling at all. There's people that start wrestling and before elementary school, and they work their way up from 40 pounds all the way up to 240 pounds. And there's a zillion weight classes in between there. And it's a long time. The tournament's long, but it ain't long like a powerlifting meet.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing, too, that a lot of people won't know is this. When I was growing up, I watched powerlifting on ABC Wild World of Sports, right? I believe I saw Bill Kazmaier. I remember seeing Vincenello. So they can edit it, right? And keep in mind, this is when there was only 3 channels on TV. So they were able to get themselves TV time in a landscape that only had 3 channels. Think about that.
Yeah.
Now we have a landscape with thousands of channels, live streams, YouTube, all this other stuff, and they're not able to pull it off. Just from a business perspective, all I see is somebody's just lazy as fuck, or they don't. I normally say you're either stupid, ignorant, or lazy. Right? You just don't know what you don't know, or you're ignorant. You might be able to know if you learn it, or you just don't care. So it's one of those 3. So there's obviously got to be a way. How that way moving forward happens. I've always said it's not up to me. I'm done. I've been done for a long time.
Yeah.
It's up to. I've always put it back on the lifters. The lifters got to figure out what they want to do. Because here's the other thing, just from the business side, is competitive lifters are a terrible market. From a business perspective, they are a terrible market.
Yep.
People can disagree with me, they can argue with me, but I got we founded this in 1998, right? I got 20 years of research to validate this. We actually went through Open Powerlifting, and we took the database of every competitive lifter and then compared that to our database of customers. And over the depth that we went, I think Alex only went back maybe 3 years, 5 years. The highest revenue we had was 4.3% of our total revenue came from competitive lifters, right? Now, the disconnect for us was, well, then why then is 70% of our content geared towards that? Because obviously it's not working.
Right.
Right. So, but that's only the competitive lifters, right? Compare that to the number of people who like to train to build a squat, bench, and deadlift. So that market's way bigger. And I'm guarantee you that market represents more than 4.3%, right? Yeah. But when you have companies that probably know the same thing I do, have the same type of stats I do, and if they don't, it's very easy to go pull from that database. It's open source
Right.
to be able to see. And then you're going to reach out to them and say, hey, look, can you sponsor $100,000 for my event? You're like, what the fuck, dude? You know, we only made like 60,000 total in this market last year. You know, so how is that possible?
Yeah, but you don't understand. Your banner would be on the back of a platform where dozens of people would be tuning in.
Yeah, I mean,
Tens of people.
You know, maybe for some things that might work. You know, I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
I only have, you know, my own background to go off of. But I'm not cutting the sport down. I come from the sport. You know, all my friends are in the sport. You know, it's a amazing sport, but they got to fix that, right? Because if they need backing, how are they going to find backers, right? When there's no monetization that can, like, why would any advertiser throw money out when there's a negative return? There's not a positive return.
Yeah.
And maybe there is for, I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to sit down and speak to, you know, other companies to be able to know, but maybe there are for some, maybe not. I don't know. But that's a big disconnect there too, is because where it's going to come from. But does it have to? You know, that's the other. Does it have to come from the people they think it needs to come from? Or is there a broad spectrum here where, you know, now you take these lifters and then you promote them, you know, for
Reality show.
a reality show or
Put them all in the house together.
like your truck, right? So big ass fucking truck like you had there, right? So how can you use this strength, this, you know, force development? I don't want to use power because it's not really power that lifters do, but in people's mind, power. Can they represent and help sell those type of, you know,
Yeah.
vehicles? There's where the market could be. So
Martinez,
Yeah, Martins Lisis.
he was actually on a Geico commercial or whatever. I mean, that's cool, man. That's you see him breaking into the mainstream, and it seems to be a common theme with strongman athletes. They're way more, for whatever reason, they're way more appealing because I guess the general public can relate to picking up a refrigerator and throwing lead kegs or whatever over. You know, they can see like, oh my God, that's 60 kilos that they're throwing in the air like that. You know, meanwhile, if you squat something, they'll be like, oh, how many times did you do that? Oh, just once? Oh, okay. 1,300 pounds? How many times did you do that? Just once? Oh, I mean, that's good though, right? Yeah. I mean, it's most ever done. You mentioned the powerlifting on TV, the ABC Wide World of Sports. Remember the Mountaineer Cup was repiped in on ESPN in the early 2000s, late 90s? That's another example, and it was just streamlined to the top people. They had the final results. They only followed the top 5 people or whatever. And boom, boom, boom. Here's Eddie Cohn squatting, and then here's the next guy. Boom, boom, boom. There's third attempts. Commercial break. They're all benching. They come out. Boom, boom, boom. It was quick and efficient. And I think that's one way they could do it. It has to be efficient. Has to be quick. But there was money in the Mountaineer Cup.
yes.
There was a lot of money in there. You know, you know, 20 years ago there was a lot of money in there, more than there is in just about any event right now. Not all of them, but there was a nice chunk of change, 10 grand a person or something like that. You had a pair. You would pair up an amateur would pair up with a pro. So Ed Cohn would be in it every year. Then he'd get another amateur guy that they would pair, and they'd lift for combo total, and they'd split the winnings or whatever.
Yeah, as an outsider looking in, kind of seeing, and I need to confess, I'm more disconnected probably than I have been in a very long time. The lifters do seem to dictate the bigger meets more so than the federation does. Like it's almost to the point the lifters no longer give a fuck about the federation.
Right.
They're going to go to where the best directors are, and that to me is a step in the right direction.
Yes.
Right. As long as those meet directors don't end up doing what every other meet director we've seen do in the past 30 years, then I think there has potential. But what normally happens in cases like this is the meet directors start to see that tipping point to where there becomes money and they can see the ability to make money. And then instead of it going back into the meet, it goes into their pocket. And this is not just bullshit. This is 30 years of seeing it over and over and over. So if anybody's on there like, no, so-and-so's not going to do that, you know what? Tell me after they don't. I'm not saying that they're going to. I'm just saying the probability that it's going to happen, in my opinion, from what I've seen over the past 30 years, is 100% that it's going to happen.
You would just like to see it.
Yes.
Yeah, they aren't putting money back in the equipment, back in the event, back in an escrow.
The lifters.
Yeah, they're not, upgrading the equipment or whatnot. And then the problem is they keep making that margin bigger each year. They'll shave a little bit off. They'll reuse carpet, or they'll reuse this or that. They won't buy new bars when they need to. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing. There has to be meet directors and people in charge that aren't worried about making money. They're worried about putting on a show. And I think that's step one. And that's not going to be done by people with empty pockets.
No.
It's not going to be done that way, because you're going to need all those orange Elite FTS monoliths, 4 of them. And you know what? That fucker weighs a metric ton. Got to get it there. It's the best monolift on the market. That top piece about retired and killed my whole crew trying to put that dang thing back together when we moved it. But you know what? That thing ain't rocking a bit when you slam 1,300 pounds.
But it's the point that I'm making from that business side is it has to be backable.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So the first step in making anything backable is the representatives who are putting it in front of the people that they want the backing from have to have conviction behind what they're doing.
Yeah.
So now you have large corporation that's going to look into this sport, right? They want to see conviction. What do they see? Division.
Dereliction.
They do. This federation hates this. If you go and just look at this from a new spectrum, like, I don't know much about this, I'm looking into backing this, I want to put a lot of money into it, then they go into it and they just look at all the drama and all the bullshit, and it's not even drama. You can pivot. Right? Like, you can pivot MMA drama and boxing drama. You can pivot into rivalries and all this other kind of stuff. They're like, this isn't even backable. They need to get their shit together.
Why is that fat guy laying on the ground bleeding?
Yeah.
Did he get punched? No, there's no punching in powerlifting.
I mean, there's just certain
he
elements.
He just tied his shoes and had a rupture.
There's just certain elements, man. It has to be backable. There has to be a story. There's certain things that just make things that are backable.
And then eventually an ROI.
Yes.
Yeah.
But without those things, there's never an ROI. There's just not.
There needs to be that level of legitimacy.
Yeah. I don't want to keep talking about powerlifting because I'm sure these people don't give a fuck about powerlifting.
It's a little therapeutic, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's a little cathartic.
Yeah. So I kind of want to shift here a little bit. I saw a couple comments on CBD because you're a big proponent of CBD, and you are developing your own CBD brand, right?
Yeah.
Want to talk about that a little bit?
So I've been a fan of the marijuana plant for a while, and
the devil's lettuce.
Yeah, and so I have my medical card in Florida, and I actually started around the time that I got rehabbed with Stu. I just needed something to help me sleep better at night, something to take the edges off of my knees and hips, and at the time my back. So I started utilizing CBD and THC, and then I started to separate the two to see how I did with THC, how I did with CBD. One of my girlfriends from high school, a good friend of mine that lived in the neighborhood, she's been working in the industry for about 10 years now, and she told me that, hey, high doses of CBD will do really well for you. So about 3 years ago, she started sending me some test products, and then we started dialing in the consistency, the taste, the dosages, and everything, and I gave her feedback for a couple of years, and so we got to where we rolled out our CBD here recently, unofficially, but it should be rolling out in the next 2 weeks officially. And we believe everyone has different approaches, whether it should be full spectrum, broad spectrum, or isolate, and that's different cannabinoids in it, right? We believe that isolate is the best. We know exactly what it is. It's pure, and it works really well. And so it's 99% pure. The manufacturing process is 100% legit and high quality. We use MCT oil for our oil, both for our balm and for our oil. Dave's talked about some of the tinctures he's used, the oil drops.
Yep.
And they either use cheap hemp oil and or alcohol to help dissolve the CBD in the solution, and it tastes horrible. It gives people indigestion. So ours tastes good, and it works really well. And I actually have a bit of a case study where I tore my pec last April, and I slammed a bunch of CBD for about 3 weeks, and you can see the regression of my pain actually, or my swelling go down. If you were to pull up over there, if you're pulling up Brian Carroll tearing pec,
we got the link for you.
yeah, you could see.
It's in the document. There you go.
Oh, so that's my.
Pec. Oh, sorry.
That's
Not
okay.
bicep.
Yeah. But anyway, I wrote an article about the timeline in 18 days. It went from black and blue completely to nothing
Oh,
to
shit.
bench pressing in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that made me a believer in it. It helps people sleep. The topical's really good for localized pain that we found. It's not a miracle worker. It's not going to heal your lupus. People oversell things, right?
Sure.
And then immediately people turn off. But I think it's a good tool to have in the toolbox, especially if you train heavy, especially if you take anti-inflammatories. I was able to replace my CBD, just the oral, and now I use the topical with it too, but I was able to replace my Voltaren, diclofenac sodium, which is a long-acting anti-inflammatory. I've been able to eliminate that completely out of my protocol and not need it, because if you look at the side effects of Voltaren, it's basically the worst things you can think of possibly for your guts. So I've been able to get off Voltaren. I haven't taken any Voltaren in the last couple of years. I haven't needed it. So I replaced the topical cream, the Voltaren topical cream with CBD topical, and then the oral Voltaren. I was taking both. I've been able to just substitute the CBD with it.
Now, you said high doses. I mean, granted, if you're utilizing a CBD product that's quality, what is from what you've seen with your own usage of it, what do you think is a good amount?
When I had that serious strain, which is what it was, the PEC, I was taking 400 to 600 milligrams a day. So the general dose for the public is typically 10 to 20 to 30 milligrams 1 to 2 times a day. So I was ramping it up and hammering it because I was a little bit scared, and I was trying everything I could to be ready for when we brought the babies home too. That was only 2 weeks. The pec tear is 2 weeks before the babies are coming home.
Wow.
So it really, really helped clear it up really quick, and I was benching within 4 weeks. At the time, I will note I was not taking any other peptides or anti-inflammatories. I'd already eliminated the diclofenac out, and I didn't have any BPC 157 or TB 500 at the time, so I just rolled with it. So I isolated that, and that was the main thing that I used. A lot of other products out there, I hit on a minute ago, full spectrum, broad spectrum. The problem is these formulas are proprietary a lot of the time, so you don't know how much of each cannabinoid you're getting in it. So that's why we're going with CBD isolate. It's just the isolate variation, so we know what we're dealing with, whereas broad spectrum and full spectrum can be good, but they have other cannabinoids in dosages you don't even know. So it might be enough for you, it might not be enough of other cannabinoids, but we know that isolate works. So that's the way that Kristen's brand's been going for the last 8 years, and through trial and error, they've been able to eliminate the doses through the dose range through cancer patients, going through chemo, cancer patients foregoing treatment and just using THC and CBD with doses up to 1,000 milligrams a day just to keep them eating, feeling better and such. So she has a good grasp on how much of that you need through these case studies. And a lot of the time, these little bottles that you buy that are full spectrum, 200 milligrams for like $30, it might only have a couple milligrams of CBD in it because it's not regulated. That's what happened a couple years ago with the boom. It was unregulated. Then these big companies that have folded since rushed out with their product. The quality control was garbage. And once they started getting tested in the last couple of years, they were at 50, 60, 70% of what they claimed, and then they were gone. So we're all about quality over quantity with the MCT oil. And you mentioned when you walked off the taste. The MCT oil is actually good for you and it tastes good. A lot of the other companies use either hemp oil as a cheap filler or alcohol to help dissolve it, and that's what gives the stomach irritant with the way it's dissolved in. And the balm is MCT oil too, so it's a good quality. It's not cheap, but I'm not about just putting a cheap product out there, saving.
Yeah.
I want it to work. I don't want to. I've had some success over the last years in lifting and coaching and, being a McGill practitioner. The last thing I want to do is roll out some snake oil and then, everyone just bomb on me even harder than they do about my squat depth. So, but I'm all about if it doesn't work, like we talked about Dave. Dave is a unique case. He needs a lot of it, and I want feedback from people. He needs more. We're going to dial up a formula for him and let him try it. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. Some people will just flat out not respond well to it. Other people have more cannabinoid receptors that they just happen to respond, just like androgen receptors. They take a little bit and it's like boom. Some other people take just a ton and they get nothing. They look like they don't even work out. It's the same thing with the cannabinoids. It's genetic predisposition for absorption and such.
So when do you think that everything will be launching? What's your game plan for that?
So 2 weeks. 2 weeks it'll be online. I got a few people that I'm sending wholesale to. Spud's one of them. So it should be on the shelf and ready within 2 weeks. I've been doing a soft rollout and even more testing on the flavors and stuff and the labels. So within 2 weeks it should be live, completely live.
Fantastic. All right, we're not getting too many questions coming in right now. I got a couple from the Instagram that I kind of want to bring up here.
Well, let me go down this road here because
here
you
we
said
go.
something else about
There's the smile.
the THC, right?
Yeah.
So before I call it the weed card, right? Before you had the weed card,
Yeah.
how much experience did you have with THC, marijuana, whatever you want to call
A
it?
bit, yeah, quite a bit.
Quite a bit beforehand, right?
Yep.
So you're like an experienced pothead.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my story. I don't even know where to start with this. Fuck it. I'm just going to go. All right. So I've smoked pot like 5 times in my whole entire life. Right.
You want to make it 6?
Well, you follow me for a minute. Right. And I just never had a need to. Right. So,
Right.
and I barely ever drank. Right. I had
You
a
had
video.
Fireball in 2013 when
Yes.
Anderson Silva lost.
Yeah, it's probably like the last time I
time.
probably drank. So it's very rare. It's just I never saw a point of it. It's just the way my mindset was. But anyhow, when I think I was out here training with Ted earlier this year, and we were talking about the hotel where you're at. He's like, "Well, there's a medical marijuana thing that's a dispensary right there." And I'm like, "Well, what? Ohio has this now?" This how I don't. No. I'm like, well, fuck, if anybody is candidate, I have to qualify for like 5 different reasons. So I go on the website and I look and I'm like, yeah, I can qualify that. That was like 5. I'm like, this is a shoe-in. So I go down there and I go through the process. I do my little like online whatever. It wasn't hard for me to get qualified. All I really had to do was to send an
Circle
X-ray.
the whole body.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Like, yes.
And well, as soon as I sent the X-ray of my hip replacements, it was like, okay, you're good. I'm like, okay, cool. So then I go in there. I'm like, now look, I have no idea, like what I'm doing. I have no freaking idea, none. And it's
Someone
like,
get
well,
him an apple.
They're like, well, it's going to take some experimentation, right? And I'm like, okay. So then I like walk in there, and there's the big like menu, right? And I'm like, the fucking menu's got like tinctures or whatever it's called. Then it's got edibles, and there's like chocolate edibles and gum. There's like I'm just looking at this. I'm like, now if I put this in an Excel sheet and calculate the number of possible combinations to experiment from, I'm dealing with like 300,000. So I'm like telling the dude, like, here's the deal. I just want something to be able to manage the pain. I don't need to be all fucked up like I was when I was in college. Like, I had enough of that. I don't need that. And he's like, so anyhow, I walk out of there, $300 lighter with some gummy things and it's oils. Oh, then I asked him, like, I want the stuff that I just want to smoke to shit because that's all. I didn't know these other things even existed. Can't do that in Ohio.
No.
What the fuck you talking about? I can't smoke in Ohio. What the fuck? Like, what's this place for? This is how stupid. And
We only have
I am,
these
right?
suppositories for you.
Then I'm like, why the hell are you calling it a flower? It's fucking weed, right? And I'm just trying to have fun with it. Anyhow, I go, oh, Jesus Christ. I'm like, okay, now what am I supposed to do? And I got this vape thing I can't even figure out how to use, right? I'm like searching YouTube on how to turn the vape on. And I'm like, I got to plug it in and charge it, right? So I got to charge it, then it's good for like 10 seconds. I'm like, well, what the fuck? So I'm like, this is way too complicated. I'm not doing that, right? So then I had the little drops, little weed drops. So I put it in there. I put a whole dropper in, right? I didn't do a drop. I did the whole dropper because I figured that's what you do. It's what you do with other shit that I've used before in the past for strength.
Yeah.
Like, so anyhow.
More the better.
Yeah, like 45 minutes later, I'm like, this ain't doing shit. Then the next thing I know, my head is stuck against the chair.
It's higher than giraffe genitals.
No, and then it's on TV. There's
I Love Lucy.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't InfoWars.
Golden Girls.
No, it was that Owen guy from fucking
Owen Benjamin.
No, from Alex Jones's thing, the War Room.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm watching him.
Fucking lizard people.
Oh my god, man, I'm laughing my ass off. Then I decide that I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And then I go to stand up. I can't feel my feet. So then I sit back down. I'm like, I do not want to walk down the stairs. I'm going to fall on my face. Finally make it down the stairs. I get an apple, come back up, and it's the fucking best apple I ever ate in my life. I go, this is what these potheads are talking about with the food tasting so good. I need to get another apple. But do I go now? Or what's going to happen? Anyhow, I was fucked up is what I found out. Right? And so then when I find out, okay, I'm legitimately fucked up right now. Move your arms. I'm like, motherfucker, it still hurt. Like, goddamn shit ain't doing anything. I still hurt, but I'm fucked up. So is this good or is this bad? And now you're having that stoner conversation with yourself. Then I start thinking, when's this going to end? right?
Time is passing very, 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 very slowly.
Yeah, so that was like the first experience. I'm like, fuck it, not doing that again. So I'm going to try to take the gummy before bed. So I take a piece of the gummy and wake up in the middle of the night, stoned as fuck. Laying in bed, I'm like, I'm just going to pee myself. I do not want to walk to the bathroom. So then it's like going through back and forth. So I've been practicing this whole stoner thing, and I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
So I need some help.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, we can definitely go.
Because I'm failing miserably.
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of a 411.
But here's the other concern that popped up that I didn't know at the time. Like, I can't get a concealed carry now. So I'm like, fuck, how do I get rid of the weed card?
It's a different kind of high.
Yeah, what's more important really in my life at this point in time? So
yeah, that's a whole complicated issue with the federal and local, and it just gives me a headache even trying to figure out, the ins and outs. Yeah, so you got to find the right dosage of the THC for sure, and man,
well, it's a strain too. Like this is a rabbit hole that's not just a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
this is like a whole fucking garden of different kind of shit.
Yeah, it's like you got to get high to figure out how to get high.
Well, it kind of sounds like if you didn't start in junior high, you're fucked.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the intensity of it, it's gone up tremendously in terms of potency. It's insane.
They are basically little bodybuilder plants. They plant them in cocoa. They feed them magnesium and calcium, and they play easy listening music to the plants. Not even joking. Totally serious. They put so much effort in these plants, and they're so potent, and they can accelerate the potency, and they grow them inside. And they're not plants anymore. They're trees. They're literally trees. And it's interesting. I went up and helped my friend harvest one time for his grow, and we were trimming and everything. And man, some of these buds, they're just like the size of a 2-liter bottle on there.
So I mean, here's basically the overarching question is, the only reason I'm doing this, because I don't care about I don't like the mental state, right? I don't really give a shit about that. I'm doing it for the pain management, right? So I've been on a pain management program since 2005, right? That's medically supervised and all that. But it's becoming more and more of a pain in the ass to be able to deal with that, and how it works.
And that's annoying because, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
It's annoying because I understand that so many people got hooked on them. I understand the system was completely abused. With in Florida everyone was coming from up here to Florida, Kentucky, Kentucky, West Virginia, tri-state, coming down, Tennessee too. I understand that, but at the same time, at the end of the day, people need to take responsibility for. I'm not saying that addiction isn't a disease. I'm not saying, but at the same time, people need these medicines. There's some people that they're not going to be able to get relief unless they have 20 milligrams of hydrocodone a day. They're just not going to. So now you make it impossible for the people that need it to get it, and you're shunning it. Like the research has shown that opiates, when they're managed right, they are highly addictive, but they're not that bad for you, like people say.
It has to be managed right, right? To where it's possible, right? Because that's basically what I have, and 10 milligrams.
Yeah.
5 twice a day. And but there's a lot of hoops. A lot of hoops, and every year it changes. And so I'm looking at this and it's like, okay, this is managed. Fortunately, I'm not taking 30 a day. I've never had a need to be able to take 30 a day, but I've seen this go from a prescription that was renewable for a year, down to all the crazy shit. So I'm seeing the writing on the wall. So that's why, medical marijuana, we got this. When this finally stops, right, and I see the writing on the wall. It's going to. Yeah. And when it stops, that's just me personally from the selfish side. From what you're talking about, what are all these other people going to do? That aren't going to be able to find the other way, right? They're going to heroin. Where are they going to go? Yep. They're going to find a way. Yep. And so that's what I was looking for, is just that little bit, because it's not doing anything inflammation wise, right? It's just affecting the brain just enough that you don't care enough, about it as much. That's all it is. So I see the possibility of the THC being able to do that, and it's dose related. So you being an experienced pothead, would you say that my assessment is right? Yeah.
So what you need, and I'll see about what they have down there when I go back, and I'm checking out the talent in the parking lot for the for the dispensary. But jokes aside, you need something similar to 3 or 4 parts CBD to 1 part THC. Yeah. So heavy CBD and a little bit of THC to take the edge off, but the CBD will help take your pain away. So you got to think of the CBD attacking the inflammation a bit, the THC being the analgesic. So THC takes the edge off, the CBD works the magic. And so 3 to 4 parts to 1, I think would be really good. So something like a dose of 50 milligrams of THC to maybe 10 or something like that, or 15 THC would be a good start, or maybe even less THC than that. But hammering the CBD, I think you would see. And another thing too is the CBD help offsets the head high with THC. It'll help level you out a little bit. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it will. It will. So that should help a great deal.
So I could take, say, the CBD that you sent, right? So the next time I venture down this path with the shit that I have, I take, some of that. Yeah. I can look at the dose and just figure it out.
So take a full dropper would be 30 milligrams on that, and then take 2.5 or so, or take 5 milligrams with that.
Yeah, I can try to do that.
Yeah.
Any advice from the people that are out there that are like enjoying my story?
Actually, Cameron just said Dave needs CBD rather than THC. All about the terps. So
because of terp.
The terps are the active ingredients that have different influences. So it's the smells and the aromas and the effects of the body. So some of them lead to more sleep, some lead to more healing, some lead to more relaxation. So it's hard to know exactly all the terpenes that are in each one, but that's why we go with isolate, because we know exactly what's in there. That's he's kind of making the point that otherwise it's a crapshoot. You have no idea what's in from full spectrum to broad spectrum. It's inconsistent.
So that's my other concern here is we kind of know exactly what I need from the Norco, like exactly, because the tolerance hasn't even changed over all this time, where now if this variable changes all the time because you don't know what it is, like how do you control that?
It's hard, and that's why I'm fortunate that I have my own brand now, because I've been experimenting, and I go to the dispensaries in Jacksonville, and it really is all over the place. So you've got to find certain strains and certain brands that you like, and then you stay with them. And just stay as consistent as possible with the dosages.
Well, it's kind of the same thing as the old school other shit.
Yes. Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard because it's not the exact clean science that going to Kroger to refill.
There's a point in my time I injected cattle implants, so I'm not really too concerned about.
Right.
Accurately did that though.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's some good stuff, man. Some feedlot heiferoid supplements.
Heiferoid.
It sounds like a made-up name.
No, it's for real.
But it is a little bit. It's more sketchy than going to Kroger and getting your prescription filled. You know what you're getting, unless the pharmacist had a bad night or something. He's all jacked up and gives you
the wrong shit.
Yeah.
What else we got here?
So, a question that came in a few times was we're talking a lot about pain relief and injuries and whatnot. The questions come up a bunch of, can you compete at a high level in powerlifting and not be all jacked up?
It's I guess in the realm of possibility, it is possible to have the best genetics, to have a really good training program, and be lucky, but you're going to get hurt.
For longevity, no. I would say no. If you're young, you know, say you mature fast in the sport, and there's people it happens, right?
Yeah.
1825 probably can, you know, do real well. Then if you get out young,
Yeah.
but that longevity, man, the wear and tear, it's gonna get you. But you know what? That's kind of like an unfair question, because that's true in any sport. Show me one person in the NFL that's not scathed.
All right.
You know, well, I mean, when you're talking about competing at a national level and a high level, if you were to compare sports across means, that is the same as the caliber of you're dealing with people that are ranked in the top 10, 15%.
Yeah, and that's, and they said successful, right?
What is
they
it-
had
what-
they had
you gotta
a high
define-
level, like competing at the highest level of the
Yeah,
sport.
but that's all relative. Like a high level to someone might be a 500-pound squat. A high level might be a 1,500-pound squat. You know, they're trying for, you know, in 10 years from now or something.
I mean,
you know?
I've said this before. The fact of the matter is the time when you decide to compete in anything is about the same time you decided that competing was more important than health.
Exactly.
I think that's
Right. So
yeah.
if that's not the case, then you're going to recreationally participate. So you can still do recreational meets or whatever you want to call it, or you can play recreational soccer or whatever it is. That's not the same as making that other decision.
Going all in.
It is kind of right. And if you're going to make that decision to go all in, are you really willing to make the decision to go all in? Because if you're not, maybe you want to just recreationally do that.
And what's funny is I see more recreational lifters for their back than by far anyone that's competitive, because what do? I like deadlifting. I learned how to deadlift 3 weeks ago. I was trying to pull 405. It got out in front of me, and I felt a pop. I was squatting. I was feeling good. I got a little forward. I felt a pop. That's literally like what I get 5-6 times a week, like that exact thing. I'm not a competitive lifter, but I love doing the lifts.
That's the majority. By far, that's the majority. But on the other side of that, a competitive lifter wouldn't put themselves in a position for that to happen.
Right.
Meets 16 weeks out. I can't have this. And any lifter, I'm not going to say any, but I would say the vast majority of know what you're talking about with the pop. Right? It would pretty much, I can say we've all had it, right? You thought, oh, fuck. And you can shake it off, but it's a couple weeks.
Yeah.
You know, at best, it's a couple weeks. At best, maybe a few days, but still, you're going to be you're going to learn from that one little pop, like, oh, shit. If I'm going to squat this Friday, I need to really be conscious about what I'm doing. And then actually for some lifters, it can be the best thing to happen early, because they're going to refocus on some of the things that you showed today. Like, how do I get up? How do I get out of bed? How do I get off a chair? How do I do? And these things, people still don't think we're serious when we talk about these things.
I know.
You know, and it's ridiculous, because they're tearing their backs apart doing that far more than they are squatting or deadlifting or anything.
They're locked in when they're squatting and deadlifting.
Yeah.
They're locked in and stiff, but they're not when they, you know, reach down to grab their belt or to unload the bar. They take the time off, like mentally, and they check out. And that's cumulative. The lifting, the loading, the unloading, you know, the way you're treating your body before you went to the gym, after the gym, you know, it's all cumulative with that, especially concerning the spine. The next thing you know, it happens suddenly, when it's been happening for the last 5 years. You just haven't paid attention to it.
If you could go back to your 16's probably too young, to your, when was the first nationals you did? Was it the WPO? That was like one of your, you had to qualify for it.
Yeah, the first senior nationals did was 04 in Baton Rouge.
If you could go back to, you know, Brian Carroll of 03 to give him powerlifting advice, what would you say? So you're already through the teenage years. You're at this point, you're committed, right, to the sport moving forward.
21.
Yeah. So now you're looking back, right? Now, granted, a lot of the things you've learned through the mistakes, so I get all that. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But what would be some takeaways that you would want to tell him that you wish you would have known then?
Believe in yourself. Know that your current, you have more ability than you believe you do. Take your time and don't rush, and prepare for the long haul. Don't think about the next 6 months or 2 years. Think about the next 5 years in chunks at a time. And if I would have done that and known that, it's interesting because if you'd have told me it would have took 21 years of competing to hit, my best squat ever. I mean, first of all, if you'd have told me I would have squatted 1,000 pounds, I probably would have been like, whatever, I'm not going to squat 1,000 pounds. So it's kind of hard to say, but the big thing is take your time, build the foundation, don't compete so much, and just enjoy the process. Because I was in a rush. The whole time I've been in a rush. Hurry up and compete. Hurry up and rest. When's the next meet cycle coming up? I need to beat those numbers. I mean, it was just completely obsessive for me for so long.
But isn't some of that necessary, though?
It is. It was completely necessary. And I still would have done it all. I still would have done everything,
Mm-hmm.
but I would have been a lot more patient and been a little more easy on myself about things. And I would have been a little bit more grateful, too. Grateful along the way and the pathway, and accepted the challenges as challenges instead of like the end of the world. Just mature. I wish I would have had a little bit more of a mature approach when I was, 20 years old or so. But that's not the way things work.
What is to those
wisdom and
listening?
age.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those listening that are in that position, though, it's the takeaway that I'm kind of seeing here is instead of thinking of where you want to be a year from now, think of where you want to be 4 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say a quadrennial, like Olympics. Olympic sports work on the quadrennials. Even high school football players are kind of working
Mm-hmm.
on the 3-year, cycle when they come in there, but if you work on that quadrennial, then it puts things a little easier into focus, and it shows you got a little more time than you think too,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't think you have the time.
Right.
So if it's you want whatever it is to be ranked top 10, whatever, it doesn't have to be next year.
Right.
Especially when you're just starting, even though you want it so bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really, here's the trick though, if you really want it so bad, once you put yourself in the position to make the highest probability of getting it,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So is that highest probability of getting it going to happen in 6 months or 4 years?
Right.
So it's a mind fuck,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's the takeaway with that, because that creates that longevity. Because if you really, really love it, and this is probably with any sport, any passion or whatever it is, 10 years goes by and you don't even know it was 10 years.
Yeah.
Where at the same time, how many people come in and out of the sport within 2 or 3 years? Way, way, way more.
Yep.
So the first thing I think is you got to figure out who you are. Are you going to be a person who's going to be around for just a few years? Because then I could probably have a conversation of, put the throttle down,
Mm-hmm.
rush and break everything, because you're not going to be around long.
Right.
But if you're going to be around, you don't want to be out before you have the potential to be your best. That's the tricky part.
And I mean, you see that with strongman. Like the most competitive strongmen in the world are in their late 40s.
I think there's a level of maturity to this. There are outliers, right? So even in like the Olympia and the bodybuilding, it's for now it's getting younger again. It kind of like works in these weird waves.
Mm-hmm.
But for most of it, it's going to take a lot longer than people think it's going to take.
Yeah, because you have the capability of doing it, and then you executing it in the gym, and then you have to have the good day at the meet under those conditions. And my best lifts together in a meet added together is 29:30. My best total is 27:30. So these are not gym lifts; these are lifts done in a meet. It's just hard as hell to put all that together.
Well, let's say the squat, which is many will call it just a primal movement pattern. Like, what's the big deal? It's just a squat. But I can have a conversation with you about the squat and say, when you're in a meet, right, and you're coming up, or even when you take the squat out of the rack. There's so many little adjustments you need to make to let the bar settle as it comes down. And all these adjustments that you're making are in that millisecond based upon where it feels. How's the weight feel? Where's this feel? How's this feel? At that point, that is not a primal pattern. That's skill acquisition over 20 years to where you don't have to worry about squat down, stand up. That's given. You don't have to worry about exact placement of how this technique's supposed to look. That's given. The only thing you have to worry about is, doesn't feel where it needs to be correct. Doesn't feel where it needs to be correct. Doesn't feel where it needs to be correct. Somebody with 2 years experience can't do that. They're like, fucking heavy squat it. Fucking heavy squat it. And that comes with repetition and time. And load too, because it changes the heavier the shit gets on your back. You know, it changes a lot. You know, that's kind of where Matt Dimmel told me many years ago. It's going to feel heavy on your back. It don't mean you can't lift it. But you need to understand it's going to feel heavy. And there's a certain weight for everybody. And I think it changes as you get stronger. It probably moves up, you know, a little bit. But that's something that I think is very, what do I want to say, misunderstood. You know, with coaches, you know, that are teaching primal movement, squats, stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I understand all that. I totally get all that. I get that from personal training's perspective. You start talking a skill, you know, competitive skill, we're talking a completely different thing.
And whole, like, multiple levels.
You got to you got to make those corrections with, you know, a load on your back that can break your back literally. You know,
and it's funny, we were talking about that today in one of the videos, and when we were demonstrating the McGill Big Three, we had Jen was her name, Jen, doing the movements, and while we were correcting them, you could see, I mean, she's strong, she's very strong, and we were just correcting the tiniest things, and all of a sudden it's like, fuck. Like that changes the movement entirely. Just
getting her left hip to open up a little more so she wasn't getting the kick in. Just a little thing like that. But, I mean, it's years and years and years of not only doing the lift yourself, but analyzing movement and learning how to watch movement and seeing it. Like, things happen quick. You got to be able to look at 25 different things at the same time and then move around to the other side of the room. And then go north, south, east, west, and then you're still like, I don't know, need to do another rep. So there's so much to it that when you entrust a coach to help you, I mean, nutrition, training, progressions, coming back from an injury, you need to really do your research to see like who you're letting advise you to do these things. We talked about it earlier, the 6 questions that you have. I mean, it's not just anyone can teach you how to do these movements correctly. Anyone can tell you to put a bar on your back and squat down and drive your heels to come up. And that's what you see at the CrossFit gyms, you know, and that's where you see back patients and knee patients and hip patients and shoulder patients that are just lining up to PT, you know, all over the place. And not just anyone is built. We went through this today. Not everyone is built to catch a snatch in the hole with good form. Not everyone's built to do a deep powerlifting squat below parallel. The hip anatomy on everyone is a little bit different. Some people can literally keep a flat back and set their butt on the ground. Some Chinese athletes, some Polish and Russian athletes. You know, people like me from Ireland and Scotland, we have more of a deeper hip. So it's going to take, you know, if I go low, it's going to come out of my lower back. It's just my structure. It's just how it is. So these people that say everyone should squat ass to grass in these football programs, they don't understand basic anatomy and physiology. By the way, football coaches, when do football players play with their ass on the ground? Never. They don't play that low. So there's been multiple tests. The most leg activation the quad comes from about a half squat for football players. Trap bar deadlifts off a platform. That's how they should be playing. They shouldn't be training like a power lifter off the ground or squatting their ass below. Like, I was working with an NBA player and he showed me the way they told him to squat. It's like, dude, this is like
he'd be squatting
terrible.
For 3 hours. Like he would just be going down and down and down. He would never hit the bottom.
And they're saying that they want, you know, the people 6'7", in football to squat just like the 5'5" running backs. It's like, no, each person is different. Their demands on the field are different. Their builds are different. You can't just have everyone do the same workout when it comes to that level. You got to have them separated, unless you want everyone to be hurt, just because you want everyone to squat to a low box.
Well, that's the other thing about that level, though. They're already hurt.
Yep.
Right? So every one of them have nicks and dings and surgeries and all the other stuff. So you can't train them as a group simply just because of that either.
And they're multi-million-dollar athletes that they have these derelict strength coaches that walk in there, and I've seen it. Like, dude, like, what is going on here? This is, a $1 billion freaking franchise, and you guys have junior coaches in here. Just, it reminded me of 10th grade weightlifting class. Just everyone doing whatever the hell they want with any form and loud music and just
getting
chaos.
hyped up.
Yeah, which is good. You want to have a team environment. That's what's attractive to people about CrossFit. Team environment, everyone get together, train, all that stuff, camaraderie. The same thing in the locker rooms, but you don't want a bunch of tomfoolery in there where people are getting hurt, because then what good is the training? You're supposed to keep them injury-free and on the field. If they're getting hurt in the weight room, that doesn't make any sense.
We had a couple super chats actually pop up here while we were talking from Derek. Tore his tricep off in October, benching mid-300s again already. Arm size difference sucks. How to fix that? He wants to know if he should do one side more than the other.
What do you have?
You can take that. I mean,
definitely do some single arm stuff. Maybe do some before and after you train. Maybe an extra day. Is he saying he's having uneven lockout issues? He's back to 300.
Just the size
that's
difference.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just might take a little bit of time to fill back out, or the muscle itself and or the tendon is just not the same anymore. It's stretched out, it's lengthened, it's thinner. So it may never actually be the same. Are we talking a 16th of an inch? Are we talking about 2 inches? Like, there's a big...
Yes. I think you really have with that, you have to go off bar path, how it feels. Does it feel even? Does it feel like it's supposed to feel, right? Because...
No uneven lockout, just responded.
Yeah, so I mean, you're once you're injured and it's a surgery, you're compromised, right? So I've known lifters that have a significant difference in arm length, right? So if you looked at their bench, you'd be like, what the fuck? Why are you 3 fingers wider on one side than the other?
Sure.
And people will try to fix that.
Yep.
It's like, dude, the Vogelpohl was one that he had to stagger his grip because of issues like that.
Yeah.
And people are going to try to fix it. It's like, you do understand. They're like, well, it's so imbalanced. I'm like, dude, his arm is longer than the other one.
Yep.
So these are just things that kind of happen with injuries, right? So I do think if the muscle belly, there's a difference there, right? So that can be nerve damage because of the surgery. It's going to take a long time for that to kind of reestablish, reconnect. So maybe he's doing some work on that, like Brian said, is important. But if the bar path is right, it feels right when you strain it. Two things. It's the same when you fatigue. So high rep stuff, it fatigues at the same balance, I guess. I don't know how to say what I'm saying, without being crooked. And if it fatigues under a single load, so that matters. Now, if it's always lagging, right, that's how we've kind of figured out with a lot of these tricep tear guys that one side always lagged, right? Yep. So it's like, oh shit, you need to stagger your grip, which is like the worst thing people would say, but they still got to lock it out. If they can't lock it out, now, granted, if they're not a competitor, maybe the advice would be different.
Right.
Actually, that conversation would be, do you need to do that exercise anymore?
Yeah, so to kind of summarize, I think that, first of all, does the surgery feel like it held good? Does he have any pain? There's things like that. Does it feel like it's going to break when he's benching? It sounds like he's back to everything. It sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds like it's more of an aesthetic issue.
Take your time. And let the anchor and the surgery do its thing, and don't be in too much of a hurry to hit PRs and stuff. It sounds like he's already back there, but just want to encourage that right side. That right side might be compensating a little bit more than he understands
in other areas.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, he just said he's a 1/4 inch difference from one side to the other.
Yeah, I mean that's not all that uncommon for people that's not even injured.
All right, we got another question that came in. Following Westside Barbell powerlifting program, can Dave briefly talk about how often he would go into a circumax phase when he trained with Louie?
When I was there, it's just before a meet. So twice a year. Now, that may have changed after I've been there. But, and it had a defined purpose, right? So it's like, the way that I see it, so Louis may see it different. You know, it's been a long time since I've talked to him about training in this type of regard. The way I saw it was you're putting this crazy increased demand on it to try to get a higher level of super compensation from it, which is, that alone is already taking a peaking cycle to a different level of risk, right? So the outcome might be 5% better, but the odds of that outcome not being 5% better are probably higher than if you just use the regular peaking phase.
Right.
So are you willing to risk, this is how I thought of it. Are you willing to risk the performance at this meet for that extra 5% that may be there or may not be there? Right. So that's how I kind of looked at it. And a lot of the times I was, right. So granted, it wasn't, I never saw this, if I do this, is that cost benefit ratio going to be 20%?
Yeah.
Or 10%. I mean, that's 50 pounds to 100 pounds. I mean, it can jump up there pretty quick. It's like, well, no. All right, because there's increased damage because of this with the band tension that we are using. By doing that, now I'm greatly increasing the load on my spine, which is going to fuck my bench up.
Yep.
Right? So my shoulders, mainly because of the shoulders with the tension that we are using. So that's kind of how I saw all that. So while I'm a fan of it, I'm not, because what's the level of experience? What's the skill level? What's been the peaking that's worked so far? Because when I hear beginners and intermediates, like, I'm going to do a circumax, I'm like, you're out of your fucking mind. Like the other stuff isn't going to work just as well, you know, with not the level of, but then you see people doing repeated circumaxes. Like, I just did a circumax and I did another one, deloaded. First off, there's no way in hell I could ever do that.
Yeah.
Because it wrecked you. I mean, it absolutely wrecked you. And I shouldn't say that, but when the meet was over, I was more wrecked after those meets than the ones where I didn't do that. Right? But meets can just wreck people anyhow. So that's my answer there. I'm not, it's not a bad thing. It's everything programming wise has a cost benefit ratio. People need to think about what that is, because sometimes choosing the lesser is going to be the greater. Because most people just see the 5%, but they don't see maybe that's got a 10% negative aspect to it, where the other one might have, 3% and 3%. You got to weigh this shit out. And if you don't know how to do it, ask people that have.
I know that. So we could do an analogy with bodybuilding. I think I've heard John Meadows talk about this. A few other people too in recent years. So with bodybuilding, there's a couple different schools of thought. There's the person that, like, I believe it was Meadows, I could be wrong, but they diet longer. They diet a little bit longer so they don't have to do all the water loading and the tricks and everything at the end. They just pull their water a little bit and they go. Some other people, they do all the tricks in the book. They stand to look 2% better or 10% worse. So a lot of the time they're like, we're just going to diet for 2 weeks longer. We're not going to do all this stuff where things can go haywire. We're going to come in lean in time. We're going to pull a little bit of water off and then we're good. And that's the same type of thing. Is it really worth trying to pull out all these bells and whistles to only gain 2% when we're most likely going to, if at all, look just, the same or maybe even worse at the night show? It's going to be all over the place, look really good at one point, then you spill over at night, and then it's just not worth it. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
Diet longer, and then don't worry about getting so cute with that stuff. Drop your water and come in full.
And sometimes it may, right? Say it's a lifter and their best squat is 480 or that's 475, right? Like, what's the point of doing like 480, 485? Like 500 is the next big thing.
Right.
That might take one of those, okay, let's do this on this training cycle. And they're willing to take the risk because they're not going to be satisfied with a 490.
Yeah.
And I get that, but if it doesn't work out, then next time don't do that again. Do it a different way.
Right.
So there are times. Not every time.
The correct answer is if it works, it's good. If it doesn't work, it was a bad idea. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, the hindsight. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I see with lifters when I sit down and I talk to them, if they have any experience or a decent level of experience, you just talk a little while about what's worked and what hasn't worked. They know the answers to everything already.
Right.
They just need some kind of confirmation to be not confirmation bias. I mean, you really need to talk about what worked, what didn't work. And then they can start figuring some things out and see where the holes are. Because they'll also, when they find, they got to figure out the holes, the weak points from that. I don't see the point of changing if it's a lifter that's been training for 10 years. I don't see the point of shit canning everything that they're doing to be able to do something else without having a conversation to see is there 50% here that we can retain and then build off of. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's those conversations that I think people need to have more of with their coach or with a consult, or they need to understand.
Yeah, I don't want to rant about that.
Go ahead.
Come on, let it rip.
Go.
Okay, you're going to do that with your fucking online coach that's going to charge you $250 for and send you a program every single week. You know, something like that. You know, the coach has got to do some things like Brian does where they have phone consultations. This is a conversation, and this isn't a 10-minute conversation. This is a couple-hour conversation that's going to take an investment to be able to do this, right? So and I've done these. So if I do this, it's probably 3 hours of my time, and somebody's going to be paying probably $750 before it's over with, because I got to have all their training shit first to be able to have the conversation. But I can say when it's all said and done, they won't have to hire a fucking online coach to send them a week program every single week, because they're going to know what they're supposed to do. But that's the weird ass thing with this whole dynamic that's going on, is people don't want to do that. Right? Or maybe they would if they knew the option was available. Maybe it really comes back on the people that are providing the service, because there's more value from the phone call, right? Or a FaceTime or whatever people do anymore, you know, to be able to dig deep in the weeds to figure out what we're talking about here, than there is, here's this week program, and by the way, next week I'll send you the next one. You don't think these fuckers already got all 12 weeks written out?
Yeah.
You know, it's all in there. So that's kind of where my rant goes with this, because how can you do that? Like if you're an online coach and you're charging, it's probably $250 for 12 weeks, or they're using some service and they're paying $20 a month, right?
Right.
So you're going to call the person that wrote the program and they're going to sit there and talk to you for 2 hours about this for $20 a month.
It's a great deal.
It ain't going to fucking happen.
Right.
You know, so there's got to be expectations kind of on both sides. And a lot of the times it was fucking, I'm done. But it's just a fucked up industry. It is a fucked up industry.
Yeah. I was talking with Sam a little while ago, and they're paying to rent your brain and your experience. They're not just paying for your time. They're paying to rent your brain and pick your brain.
But they're not even doing that.
Yeah.
They just want, here, send the program. And here's the program. And then, you know, anyhow.
Is what they should be doing, is pay to rent your brain.
Right.
Rent your brain.
And you're expediting the process for them.
Well, you want to know how good your coach is. If you have a coach, then ask him how much would it cost to do a phone consult for an hour, and just talk to him. Then after the time you're done with that, if you have any brain in your head, you're going to realize A, they're a nitwit, or B, they're not.
Yep.
Right? Yep. But at least that time that you're spending is going to give them more information to be able to make better adjustments to the program, if they're even making them in the first place.
Right.
So,
and a good coach would be having those conversations.
But they can't.
Right.
You know, if they got 30 clients or 70 clients or whatever, how many clients, how they do that? There's 40 hours, work hours in a week. However, I mean, nobody works that, but anyhow, they're supposed to be, right? Some people it is, but me, it's not. Yeah. But anyhow, it's just, how do you do it? So ask any of these guys, oh, how many clients you got? I got 60 clients. Okay, so how's that work out?
Yep.
You know, so if each one, if you're doing an hour consult with each one, that's 60 hours, then when are you actually doing the program?
Yep.
You know, so they're not. They're just selling people a training program. Quit saying it's fucking coaching. It's not.
Right.
It is not online coaching. It's a goddamn program. Yep. Flat out simple. Tell me I'm wrong. What part of this is coaching?
Yeah.
Looking at a video of 1 rep once a week. You know, they did fucking 99 warm-up reps to get to that 1 rep. So all those could have been fucked up by mysteriously they hit this one right.
Sending you my best one.
Yep.
Yeah, and you think they're going to send the shittiest one? Anyhow, stop.
Well, speaking of programs, we just got a super chat. Somebody wants to know the update on yours and John's Powerbuilding program.
It should be done. It should be done. And we're John and I are going to be in Philadelphia on Monday and Tuesday. So obviously it's not going to launch then. It could launch next week. I haven't talked to John. I will know more when I get back on Tuesday. But we were just waiting on formatting of the last week of the program. And when I mean formatting, I mean the graphic crap. So it's basically done. And he wasn't. When I talked to him, the launch is basically going to be him and I sitting down doing a live YouTube thing, and here it is. Go.
Okay. We got another super chat. Dave, I did those partial range of motion Romanian deadlifts for around 6 weeks and literally 50 pounds to my best conventional pull. Only change that he did. Nailed it. Thanks.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
That I like that. I like the way that answer just ended. Made one change, one variable at a time. And you talked about a guy that's 10 years in that's just throwing everything out and saying, okay, this is a new program. This is my new best friend. Everything I've done is garbage. We're going to go here, and we're going to do this. One thing at a time. And you might just be one little tweak or adjustment away from like really breaking into the next level.
With most people, there's so much low-hanging fruit, it's ridiculous. The only this is from my experience, the only time it really gets hard is when you're dealing with very, very high-level power lifters and you're trying to build a squat, bench, and a deadlift. Right? High-level pro athletes, it's not as hard from a strength and conditioning standpoint because they're really beginners and intermediates in strength and conditioning.
And at that high level, you're just trying to make sure they don't trip over a dumbbell.
Well, the high-level powerlifters, you got ego things, you got all these other things you got to contend with, which isn't really contending if you know it. You've been around it your whole life. You expect it's there. It's like, how do you trick the fucker into doing what you think they should do?
Yeah.
And make it them feel like that they're empowered. And, it's a game. It is. It's really a game. It's a hard game. Right, and it's basically just us working with our friends because nobody's going to pay for that game either.
Yeah, and then you got these high-level power lifters that you got to, like you said, the ego and such, and then they work the night shift at the titty bar, so you got to deal with their sleep patterns and their everything.
Well, that. See, that would be the low-hanging fruit for them, but in
sleep.
a lot of those cases, though, they can't change that because that's the only income they have.
Tell them to stop hanging out with your friends outside the weed store.
There's so much low-hanging fruit, and we could do a whole freaking podcast on low-hanging fruit just by talking about a stable core, a rigid core, building a core of iron, moving well, getting sleep, and eating a decent diet, and having a decent program where you go light every once in a while. You attack your weaknesses. There you go. There's your program. Now figure out what your weaknesses are and attack them. Dial in your form. Like people are looking for this freaking magic bullet, and the magic bullet is experiment. Find what works for you. Remove the things that don't work for you. And then one variable at a time, and stop acting like you're entitled to success in 6 months or 1 year. It isn't fair. My squat's been stuck. Man, my freaking squat was stuck for 10 years. 10 years it was stuck. And it wasn't like I was just going and hitting 800, dropped from 1185 to 800. It's 1080, 1150, 1150, 1120, 1050. It's just, and then it's just one of those things. People think that they're entitled to big lifts indefinitely. They think they don't have to put the work in. They also think they're entitled to lift heavy forever. It's like, well, it's not fair. I'm hurt. Nothing in life is fair. That's why people with longevity that's been doing it forever, Tom Brady is like, dude, that guy is special to be able to do that for 21 years or 22 years. Dave Hoff is special to be able to lift at that level for the last 11 years. It's special. Ed Cohn, 20 years not losing a meet. That is special. It isn't just about, man, this one guy passed for 1,000 yards last week. That'll be headlines for a week or two, and then boom, they're just forgotten because he's a nobody. He's a one-hitter. And that's it. So, man, it's just all about. I digress.
So that's all the questions we got. I don't know if you want to bring this in for a landing. We're almost at 3 hours.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
we can bring it down so you can close us out.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you jump on elitefts.com, check out all the content we have, check out anything that, what was that quote? Anything that fits in a gear bag or you put weight on?
Anything you can put in a gym bag or you can load weight on, we have.
That's beautiful. That's a great way to do it. Brian, thank you very much for joining us today. And a message to everybody still listening here. Do we still want to do that if they do the timestamps? Want to bring that up before we?
Yeah, if anybody that timestamps this, we'll send you, how do we say this? Because we can't say
a reward.
We'll send you a reward because we're not allowed to say the word FREE, I guess, on YouTube.
Yeah, we get
but anyhow,
blocked.
But anybody that does the timestamps, it helps us tremendously. It helps everybody else as well, and we'll definitely take care of you.
Excellent. Perfect.
Beautiful.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining us on this. And we will talk to you in the next one.
Good night.
That's probably my best piece of advice. Build the chest, the rest. This is an upper body business, like I said earlier, right? I love that. That pushes you a lot. That's what they always say. Train with somebody that's stronger than you because that's going to push you. Right? So I don't want to live a life where I have to count every calorie or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to look like shit. I want to be a sloppy